the plan for today, as the title would imply, is to have a conversation with MrGirl. It's gonna be more of an interview because I just have like a lot of questions and I'll work through them with him. There will be some parts where I'm gonna confront him about things that I disagree with. The bulk of those are gonna have to do with his review of Cuties, just because that's fresh on my brain. Hopefully we can have more like conversations with Mr. Cutie in the future. Part of my hope with this is that he puts me on the roster of people that kind of treat him fairly, and then we could have recurring talks if he's actually going to be somebody who like stays in the space. So we'll see. In case you didn't know, yesterday we had a watch party that was funded on stream. How many subs for you to watch Cuties? Should we set up a sub goal for that? I don't think I should do it in subs. I think I should do it in money. If you wanted a 1 hour review of like all of my thoughts about Cuties, I would do it for like 200, 250. That's 100 bits. I'm gonna count that as $1. That's $1. There you go, only 249. I saw 1,000 bits. I'll put that up on the tally there. Matt Penn with the 50. I don't know what I'm voting for, but I'm voting for it. You sound like a Democrat voter. Oh no, that's another 30 to Cuties. To watch Cuties, that's another 10. So this is 80 plus 16 plus 65 plus. Can people counter donate to make it go down? Maybe. You could try. You could experiment, see if I'll do it. Go ahead, donate and say it's counter and we'll see. I'm gonna actually have to keep a tally. This is gonna be a battle. That's plus 150 to Cuties. That brings us up to 259. Oh man, Cuties wins it. And I think we had around 30 people in a call and we all watch the movie. You got to see what the process looks like for me taking notes, what I'm paying attention to, and well, frankly, Cuties is a good movie. I'm just gonna say it. Oh no, Bookie is looking a little sassy. No, you know what it is? I'm gonna be real with you guys. I like kids. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's a good movie. I think what's happened is nobody watched this movie. Everybody with bad opinions about it have not seen it. I've not talked to anybody who has seen the movie start to finish who has one of these like, oh, it's all for like pedo bait, or oh, it's about the exploitation of young women. Oh, it's, you know, like, you guys all make shit up. If I were to bring any of you into like a call and ask you about it, I'm not sure you could answer questions about the movie very well, because I don't even think you have a good idea in your head. Anytime there's like a yikesy moment in this movie, it's all to serve like the story, and the story is never telling us that like, yeah, these girls are sexy, woo yeah, right? We're serving a normal audience of normal people. The lady that made this movie lived through something like this, right? She lived in France, and she had this kind of dual culture between her more conservative Muslim upbringing and then what is expected out of her, or what is normal in the context of French society or Western society. And she wanted to tell that story, and she wanted to tell a modern version of it. So she saw some girls doing way more inappropriate dances than they ought to be doing for how old they were. She figured out they were 11, they were in this dance competition. She's like, that's the angle I'm going to take, and I'm gonna like include things about social media and what these girls are emulating. This director cared about telling this story. It was a story really personal to her, and the fact that she's like gone completely silent on social media, is unlikely to ever do this again or make more movies, is sad to me, because this movie had an impact on me, and she isn't gonna make movies anymore because you guys were assholes about something you didn't even fucking see. Moist Critical made a scathing fucking 4.5 or whatever million view review where he admits in the first minute that he only watched 30 minutes of the movie.
I tried to watch Cuties. I say tried to watch because I only got through about 30 minutes before I turned it off. It is beyond repulsive.
And the rest of his takes are from 2 name drop reviews that we know of, Pay Money Wubby and MrGirl. And the only person he uses clips from is MrGirl, who we've already said has his own spin on things because he was personally attracted to the women in these situations, to the girls in these situations. So if your entire belief about Cuties is tainted by one person's negative review and another person's like quasi review that calls it like pedo bait or whatever, of course you're gonna think that. And if you only watch the first 30 minutes of the movie without getting to know any of the characters or the story or why they're behaving that way or anything else, yeah, you could easily think this. It's rough. Okay, I'm gonna call MrGirl.
Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Really good, really good. I watched that Cuties movie last night, and it left a lasting impact on me, so happy about that.
Yeah. Cuties stays with you forever. How's it going?
Good. How's everything going with you? You're Mr. Popular, so that must be good or stressful?
It's a bit overwhelming. I mean, if you've heard the things people have said about my past, you know I'm not very used to that, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's a little overwhelming. I'm like a porcupine. Like, I'm ready for attack. I don't know how to deal with, like, obviously I'm getting a lot of attacks, but the good attention is outweighing the negative, which I mean, that's happened before, but not like this. This is the most overwhelming thing, I think. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Cuties was pretty bad. I'm functional still, mostly. With Cuties, I was not.
What do you mean by functional?
Sleeping 3/4 of what I need to sleep instead of half. Flipping out and screaming at Shaylin less than once a day. Well, on average. I'd say I'm averaging 0.5 flip outs per day instead of like 3. The Cuties review, that was like I was not doing well.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Those are my two main, how much I'm screaming at Shaylin, how much I'm sleeping, you know, still exercising and stuff. Still bathing. I took a shower. That was pretty cool. Yeah.
When you got all that criticism about the Cutie stuff, how much of that do you think is coming from people who didn't watch Cuties?
99%. Right?
Yeah.
Most people who are mad about Cuties haven't seen Cuties, which is understandable. Like, I'm mad about child porn, and I've never seen child porn. And if somebody was like, well, you haven't even seen it, how are you going to critique it? I'm like, well, I don't need to see it to critique it. So I understand from their point of view, if they think it's literally porn, then yeah, they can critique it without seeing it. I think that's the central argument. Like, is it child porn or is it a movie? Mm-hmm. And then, so I think that's part of the problem I think that people had with my Cuties review, is that I talked about it like it was a movie, like that's just a fact that it's not child porn. And then I think within the I assume you also agree it's not child porn, it is a movie,
right?
Or you wouldn't have watched the whole thing. So, right?
Well, I was obligated to. Like, we hit like a dono goal, but I enjoyed it. I would watch it again.
But at a certain point, if you'd been like, oh, this is 100% just like child porn, you would have turned it off.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Me too. So I assume our discussion's going to be within the it's a movie framing of what's happening.
A little bit. So when you're talking about people were under the impression it was child porn and for that reason chose to disengage with it entirely, I do think that your review did, in my opinion, do a really good job of pointing out some of the themes in the movie and pointing out like how it is a movie, and it was a good movie. It was a decent movie. At the same time, however, you open up and have at several points this talk about how the children were sexualized in a way that you thought was successful, and that as somebody who normally would not be attracted to children, you were attracted to or found the girls in the movie hot. And I think that things like that fueled other reviewers and people who chose not to watch it, like Moist Critical, who referenced you at several points and referenced those quotes to like say,
you're saying it's my fault that he never watched it?
In part, sure.
That's funny.
I think a little bit. Like, do you not feel like you are one of the influences to people, leading them to believe it's child porn and not something to be engaged with as a movie?
I never thought of that because it's a review, but like I think of it as a reaction. But I agree that in the real world, Millions of people have seen Cuties and never talked about it, like in an offline world, and I don't even know if they know what's happening in our world.
Yeah. And
then in our world, there's a totally different set of norms and standards. Like, if Moist Critical, like, if his, like, aunt or something was like, no, I'm a feminist, and, like, I just saw this new movie on Netflix, you gotta check it out. Let's watch it together. And then he watches Cuties with his aunt and, like, his cousins and family and whatever after Thanksgiving dinner, okay? I don't think his reaction would be to say, like, this is child porn, somebody needs to go to jail, what the fuck is happening, this is the most disgusting thing I've ever fucking seen in my life. I definitely think, whether he wants to know it or not, my view is that he would probably have a much more muted, normal world reaction to the film, and he might be like, hey, well, that is a little weird, and it is a little weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't think about this before, but I think you make a good point that if you've seen some gross guy talking about how it was mildly successfully arousing, or that they looked hot or whatever, then that could prime you. You're saying this is my fault. But people were outraged because of the Netflix poster first. That's why I watched it.
Yeah.
Because people were super mad about the poster.
Yeah, when we're saying something like it's your fault, and this is something that I think will become clear as we talk, but is something I'd like to get out of the way. I'm not one of these like debate bro-y people, though I'm in the circles with them. I talk about like optics and empathy and stuff like that. So when you're saying it's your fault, I don't want you I'm not trying to say it's completely your fault or something like that. There was a lot going on here, from like other people and what they're saying to the poster. Like
you're saying there was already a vector happening, and I nudged it in a certain direction, but it was already kind of going toward that direction. I understand. Yeah,
because you became like a reference in multiple different reviews that I saw about like this kind of child porn angle, and I do think that opening up the entire review with this like, hey, this successfully like sexualized children to me, and I don't even normally feel this way about kids, but I thought those kids were hot. Like, if I know nothing about you, I don't know that you make songs about pedophiles and whatever, and at the time you didn't make all that stuff, so people wouldn't know.
No.
From their perspective, like, damn, this normal, albeit a little bit weird dude, like, got converted to, like, thinking children were attractive, like, just by watching this movie. That's frightening. I don't even want to give this a shot.
Yeah, that's you think they're afraid it was going to turn them into... You think it's like The Ring?
Maybe.
Like you watch Cuties and then 7 days later you're a pedophile?
Maybe to some people they worried about that. I think to other people just hearing that it could fill that purpose was enough for them. But I think some people at least were afraid of that as well. Like, I don't want to watch a movie that makes me feel attracted to kids or puts them in those situations where it even might.
Oh, and yet you took the risk. Well, people are also just disgusted by the idea of pedophiles getting off. Like when I said there's thousands of people masturbating to this movie as we speak, people are really horrified by that in particular, and I'm like, that just seems obviously true. Like, there's no way that's not true.
Sure. Why is that an important thing to communicate about the movie, in your opinion, though?
Well, I was trying to acknowledge people's concerns that, like, this is pedo bait, or pedophiles are gonna, like, I just saw a lot of people, I think, or maybe I'm just imagining I remember this, but my sense was that people were very concerned about pedophiles enjoying the movie, and like the idea of like, well, like if you upload like a like your daughter's gymnastics competition, whatever, right, and you upload it on YouTube because you're proud of how good she does at gymnastics, and then all of a sudden you see the video has 25 million views like 6 months later, I'm sure there is a feeling of like, oh, whoops. Wait a second, like that's not a good feeling. And so I think this is somewhat an extension, like something in that ballpark of like, I don't want to watch a movie that's not porn but that thousands of people are using as child porn. So I can kind of understand that. So I was just addressing it like, hey, if you're worried about that, this is true. That's like, there's no debate there. I think that's just watching it seems clear.
Sure. The see, having also watched it though, if I were to make a similar review to you, to be clear, the reason why I watched it was because we hit a donation goal for it, and then everybody wanted to watch it, so I'm kind of obligated to watch it start to finish.
Well, who created the donation goal?
I didn't think they would hit it, honestly.
Who created the donation goal? Let's investigate this claim a little bit.
This guy.
Yeah, my chat. If you hit this donation goal, I'm gonna stick a cucumber up my ass on camera. I'm like, oh, I never thought it would actually happen. Oh my. I think that you, if I may, I think you were hedging a bit and saying like, I don't want to say guys we're watching Cuties. I want to say like as a joke, if you like, if you guys want to watch Cuties, I'll watch Cuties, and then you're like, okay, if you're gonna make me. But like, I feel like at some level you had to be kind of gauging their interest in Cuties.
Yes, but
and they were so interested that they paid you to watch it.
Yes.
Okay.
I think maybe a more fair way of saying this, because I do get what you mean, is I watched it out of professional interest. If it was like, it wouldn't be out of personal interest. But the only reason that I'm not personally interested...
I feel like you're distancing yourself from me, and I don't like that.
Okay. Well, why did you watch Cuties in the first place, then?
Why do we have to say why we watched Cuties? I feel like the only reason to say that is to have a I'm not a pedophile contest.
Okay. You think it's to have an I'm not a pedophile contest?
Like, why bring it up? Like if you were like, hey, did you see the new Matrix? And I'm like, yes, but I watched it for professional reasons. You'd be like, well, why? What are you worried I think about you?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's... I can see that. I think that's reasonable. To be transparent with you, and you can believe me or not, the only reason that I mentioned that is so that the viewers understand that there was a goal to get there. It's not to say that like
why do you want them? Why do you want them to understand?
I'm not a pedophile because they paid for it or something. That's not really what I'm trying to communicate.
Why do you want them to understand why you watched Cuties? In my review, I never talked about why I watched Cuties.
If I pull back the curtain of Oz, it's because I want to do more of that stuff in the future, and I want them to know that like we're gonna do that with other things moving forward. So like,
but if you say you're interested in it, then you can't get them to pay you for it. So you have to say you guys can make me watch whatever movie you want, but it's gonna cost you.
Exactly. Okay. So it's more of a marketing thing that it is like, I don't want to seem like I'm weird. I didn't want to watch this. It's more of like,
okay.
Yeah.
I'm very defensive about this.
I understand, dude, because I've seen your conversations.
I want to establish trust, but I'm doing the opposite. So I apologize. Let's continue.
No, it's okay. I like the transparency. I can work through it. It doesn't make me super uncomfortable.
Okay,
so
like some people.
Yeah, like some people, some unnamed people. Yeah. When. So you saw it was a problem that other people were mentioning, and you wanted to kind of let them know, yeah, that problem, it does exist here.
I don't think it's a problem.
Okay.
I think I'm all for. I'm of two minds about pedophiles masturbating to images of children that are not child porn. One is like, I've had the experience of not being able to like get off for long periods of time, and I would say that does make me more likely to do bad things.
Okay.
On the other hand, I can also see the argument that the more raunchy or extreme pornography you view, you become desensitized to it and want more. Like the slippery slope argument. I've heard both arguments, and experientially, I guess I've experienced both. So, and the whole idea of like photorealistic CGI, like CP, is that gonna normalize it to the extent that they become more predatory? I don't know, but I guess I'm saying I'm not totally against the. Well, first of all, just as a human right, I feel like we have some right to get off. And second of all, and it doesn't, like, if I fantasize about like my coworker or something, it's I'm not hurting them. So like I do, I feel like I have a moral stance there of like I can fantasize about whatever I want, and then I have a question of like the harm to the person themselves. Like, it's not good for you to be a pedophile, so doing things that make you more of a pedophile is bad for you, and it's not good for society to have pedophiles, so doing things that make more of them is also bad. But it's possible that lolly and stuff like that makes people less likely to offend, or maybe neither, and just makes them happier. I don't know. So I don't view people jerking off to cuties as a problem.
Okay. That makes sense to me when we come all the way back around with the explanation. Yeah.
I view it as something that people are very upset about, and maybe they're right. It might be a problem. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. I guess that's where I'm at.
Okay. So when you were kind of conveying that people may be masturbating to this, what do you think your goal was, aside from like confirming those people's beliefs? Was there any goal beyond just saying, yep, that's probably happening?
Can I ask you something? One of my viewers wants you to explain the RGR fantasizing about coworkers take. Do you want to talk about, is that relevant?
Yeah, because she has this kind of weird system of like believing in like consent and sexual stuff. So she actually thinks that you are violating somebody else's consent by creating an image of them in your mind and violating that, whether you tell them or not. But she also believes that if you go out in public and you are wearing attire to make you feel sexually gratified, like, oh, I feel good, I feel like I'm sexy, I feel like other people looking at me and thinking I'm sexy makes me feel good, and so I'm going to wear clothes that I think makes me feel good in that way. She also thinks that that is violating the consent of other people because you're using their eyes and their vision and their their view on you to get off, and she thinks that's violating people's consent. So she doesn't really have a good system that I think gives us helpful answers.
I think both of those are insane.
Yeah, I don't think they're very smart or thought out.
Because it just means, it just makes consent violations so extraordinarily common that it's really an argument for violating people's consent rather than an argument against doing those things.
You could definitely take it in that direction. That would be a fun.
Well, I mean, like if you're right, 'cause, to me, the violating consent, it's like a sliding scale, and we're gonna have to draw a line somewhere, and drawing it here when we all already want to be here seems like a consent deconstruction argument, which is like kind of strange.
Yeah, and this is why I think empathy is something we need to push more in this space, and I'm happy to hear that that's something that you believe in, because if RGR were to empathize with other people, I think she would figure that out really quick. The problem is RGR, like when her debate interlocutor said, well, I wear clothes like to feel sexually gratified, does that mean that I'm violating people's consent? And she's like, yeah, of course. Wait, you're telling me you wear clothes to feel like sexually gratified so you can like sexually get off? I don't do that at all. I never wear anything to do, like, well, okay, well, you're very different than other people, because other people, that's like a fairly normal thing. But because she's not empathizing at that level and she's not willing to, she's never really going to get the problems in what she's arguing.
Yeah, I think that's goofy. Somebody said this was in the context of children being around BDSM attire at Pride events.
That's how it started.
Yeah, I feel like if you like bringing your kids to Pride, like, they're gonna see an ass. That's been my experience at every Pride event I've ever been to. Like, I guess we just need to iron out, like, is that gonna happen or not, and then we can stop being surprised one way or the other, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so my intent in bringing that up, I think I was just kind of thinking through, like, I've been through the singularity, you know, I know what's on the other side, and I'm reporting back. And one of the questions that the human race asked me before I went through was like, is it porn or not? Are people masturbating to it or not? So I just wanted to be like, the answer to your first question is yes. Okay,
that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
One thing you said that I'm not sure I agree with you on, and actually maybe like a fun jumping off point to talk about some more topics around sexuality and aesthetics and attraction, is you said the purpose of this movie at least in part, is to make you sit with this idea of, on the one hand, these are underage women,
Yeah.
and on the other hand, they're hot. Do you still stand by that being one of the main purposes or the main things that the movie is doing, or?
I think that is one of the main inner conflicts or cognitive dissonance the movie is trying to create in you. I assume for the purpose of you resolving that cognitive dissonance by saying, just because someone is hot, that doesn't mean that they're an adult. It doesn't mean that they're like ready or that they're matured. So I feel like the scene where the kids are eating gummy bears in the bed is like the most childish scene, and it's kind of bookended by them twerking, and when they're twerking, they're copying the like teenage girls that they've seen on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume that, like, definitely there's a juxtaposition there. So to me, the juxtaposition was to create discomfort in that one moment you're looking at them, they're acting like they're like 4 almost, like they're acting younger than they are. And then suddenly they're acting, maybe 4 years younger and then 4 years older. I guess in the movie they're 11, but in real life they're like 12 to 14. So, yeah, I do stand by that.
Okay. When you say that the movie is trying to create this, well, do we mean that like this is the director's intention or the production's intention, or who do we think is injecting that like purpose into the media?
I don't know. Because you could have edited it. It could be edited in a completely different way where that would not come across like that. I think that's why I said the movie is doing it, because I don't know anything about the director or her intentions, and I don't. I think I don't care.
Okay.
You know, like I feel like a piece of art or anything. Like I think you've already said things about the review that were not what I was intending to do. To like you're basically saying the review is almost a horror movie, and where I'm saying if you watch Cuties, this might be what happens to you, and that effect has the effect of that is that it terrifies people into not wanting to see the movie. That was not my intention to make it into a horror movie or to make like The Ring for Cuties, but I will agree with you if you said that's what the video is trying to do to me. I can, even though I made it and every step of the way, I could say like it is kind of doing that. I see what you mean. That's the effect it's having. So I don't mean any intention. I just mean that's what I think it does, or like what it's designed to do, even if that's not, you know,
Okay.
what the designer had in mind.
Yeah, I mean, like, I can understand that and work with that for sure. Like, the way that I would describe it is, like, incidental. It's incidental that it creates this situation in some viewers' minds where, on the one hand, they're children, and on the one hand, they're hot. Because this, on the one hand, they're hot thing, I think is more subjective than objective. Like, I think it's, I think you may overstate how many people are going to find the children in this movie hot. Like,
I don't think so. I think they're objectively hot.
Okay, if you were to guess what percentage of the audience that watched Cuties found the women sexually attractive, what percent would you say?
Well, what do you mean by found sexually attractive? Because when I say
hot,
I don't mean like literally drooling, falling, you know, like it's not like I have like a super strong reaction to seeing a hot person. So I would say, let me put it this way: if everyone in the audience were in a socially acceptable situation where it was okay to determine to answer whether they're hot, so like if you're say your son is 12 and he's like, you're like, oh, there's going to be these group of girls at this like a function that we're going to, and he says like, oh, are they hot? I think most people, if they saw the girls and then they're like had a socially acceptable reason to say yes, they'd be like, well, yeah.
Okay. Because I don't really. Like I
You
would
think
say
they were ugly?
I don't think about children in that way and like hot or ugly.
But you're being,
really.
but now you're being asked to. Are you saying you can't?
No, I can empathize with you and like go, okay, well,
no. See,
they're wearing stripper clothes and they're twerking.
I need to revoke my apology earlier for being defensive. I do think that I do think that you're trying to come out of this a little cleaner than it's going to be possible to.
We have a difference of opinion, but I think that's where it's coming from.
I don't think we have a difference of opinion. Okay. I think that you are now claiming that you are unable to determine attractiveness in 12-year-old humans.
Attractiveness to other 12-year-olds and to pedophiles. Hold on.
Objective attractiveness.
Can I like think for 2 seconds? Because
you can think for 2 minutes. I have no problem with silence. We can sit here. I will think my thoughts, and you'll think yours, and no pressure.
So, am I intellectually like capable of it? The answer is yes. But am I capable of forcing myself to feel it? The answer is no. Does that seem like a more fair answer to you? Like, I would really struggle to like...
I think it's an impossible answer.
This one?
You need to have... Okay, when you were 12, could you tell whether a 12-year-old was hot? Did you find some 12-year-olds more attractive than others?
Probably, yeah. Yeah,
and you could and you could feel it.
Yes.
Okay, but when you think back to when you were 12 and think about the people that you thought were hot and the people you thought were ugly, you're saying that your innate physiological radar for whether someone is sexually attractive has been decommissioned and no longer functions?
No, that's usually what I go back to like try and understand that. Like I can intellectualize it. I don't feel that anymore. And even when I was younger, I was generally more attracted to older people, like women that were hotter to me, because like a lot of the women that I was growing up with weren't. And the ones that I did think were hot or were cute or I was sexually attracted to were kind of already showing early signs of like the things that I already liked in older women. So that was to give you insight into like my experience when I was younger. That's how it is. So I go back to that to try and understand.
You've always been attracted to well-adjusted 25-year-old women, but what?
No, 12-year-olds too. Like I said, but like I was also. I'm just trying to be full transparency. Like there was also a lot of.
I don't think this is a transparency. This is obfuscation. Because here's what you're claiming. You're claiming that when you see a 12-year-old twerking. And if you've been paid to watch Cuties, so now you're forced to have this awful conversation with me where someone's asking you if you can tell whether the 12-year-old is hot. You're saying that in order to determine, looking at a 12-year-old, is she hot, you don't innately know. So you need to pull upon a few resources. So you say, well, if I was still 12, let me compare her to the kinds of 12-year-olds that I used to find hot when I was 12, because I now have no way to determine this. Or I can go by what I would guess other people would think about this person, and then synthesize that into some sort of educated hypothesis about whether she's hot. I don't believe that is the mechanism by which you are doing that.
Why not?
Because you're human. And I don't think that just as I can tell you which 90-year-olds are hotter than other 90-year-olds, even though I'm not particularly sexually focused on them, I can still tell you which one I would rather fuck.
Sure. Are you asking me which one I would rather fuck, or are you asking me which one I'm saying I would think is attractive, like to people that would be attracted to them? Because I think those are two different things.
Listen, I think that if we're going to talk about which of the cuties we'd most want to have sex with, first of all, we'd probably be violating TOS.
Sure.
So I don't want us to get banned. Yeah. Second of all, I feel like I'm going to need to see a scuba tank and full body scuba gear from you to go diving in waters that are that deep and murky. I feel like, you know.
Okay.
So I think that we should just keep it to... can you just like the dog's question? Can you tell which dog you'd rather fuck? And how do you think you're doing that?
Yeah.
Tell which dog is more hot or whatever. So, yeah, I guess we can agree to disagree. I just don't believe you that you went. I mean, can you tell which ones are more cute? I guess that's why I said this in the review. I think cute is a stand-in for sexually attractive. I don't think there's really a difference.
Yeah, actually, on my my document, that was like the next point that I wanted to transition us into, is that talking about like cute and cuteness leads to hotness, and hotness is sexualness. So you're like, we're only ever a few steps removed when we're saying something like that, like cute. I don't agree with that either. Like, I don't want you to think that I'm being bad faith or whatever. I really do think we just have very different outlooks on stuff. That's why I thought it would be interesting to talk with you about this in particular. So like with cute,
I know you don't want me to think. Why would you want me to think you're bad faith?
Because you said you don't believe me, but I've like explained really truthfully like how I'm internalizing this.
Well, I don't believe you.
Okay.
I don't know if that means you're bad faith. It just means that you're careful.
Do you think I'm lying to you though?
I think there is some percentage of it that you're lying to me, and some percent that you're lying to yourself, and I am trying to work out which is which.
Okay, so when I say bad faith, I'm mostly talking about like you're assuming that I'm lying rather than like giving you honest answers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't. I don't think the things I'm saying now are things that most people readily know about themselves, which is, I think, some part of why people reacted so bad to the review. Whereas I said in the review, like, I already knew this. I said the review makes you face the fact that you can be attracted to 12-year-olds, but I'm like, I already knew that, so that's not surprising to me.
Yeah. But what is surprising to you is that may be a more unique to you experience than you originally thought, whereas you think every human experiences that. Maybe that isn't the case.
No, that's not. I mean, it's not surprising to me because I don't think it's true.
But you were surprised, and
I'm not surprised at all. No, I know that most people don't know this about themselves or can't talk about it, especially in front of hundreds of people.
But why do you
I think that's part of what people are reacting about with me as like the new like Twitch whatever is that I know that about myself. B, I'm willing to say it to myself, and C, I'm also willing to say it to you. So I'm not surprised. No, I'm not surprised by your reaction or anything you're saying. No.
Sure. Okay. Surprised, maybe not the best word, but I mean, you don't believe me, and you wouldn't believe other people that would tell you they're living a different experience. But I think that would be tough for you to know because you're kind of limited to just your experience and maybe the people that you talk to. I think like.
I don't think that's true. I think. Do you agree that your average Twitch streamer? Say I've been learning the same circles as you, right? So we know some of the same people. So let's say out of the 10 people that we co-orbit, how many of them do you think would admit to themselves that they can be attracted to a 11-year-old if they could?
Probably few. They care a lot about that optics stuff. Yeah,
I just to themselves. How many of them would know themselves experientially?
Oh.
How many could admit to themselves if they saw Cuties, they thought the girls were hot? We both agree. Like we know
maybe like 60%, honestly, as long as they don't have to say it to anybody else.
Okay, so you think only 40% of people would delude themselves out of this information?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, and then of the 60%, we agree that none of them would admit this on stream.
I think Steven or Bosch might be able to, and Bosch really cares about that stuff.
At 60%, we would expect one of the two of them, most likely, or even both of them, to have experienced this. But you're telling me that if I asked Bosch, did you find the girls and Cuties hot, he would answer that directly and honestly?
No, you would have to really wring that out of him. I don't think he would.
Okay, so I guess my point is that you're saying 60% of people would admit it. So let's say my hypothesis is 100% of people, not just men, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, 60% admits themselves, and how many people admit it in public?
Ooh, probably
what
much
percent?
less.
What percent of the 60 would then admit it in public?
It's an interesting question. It would have to be pretty low, eh? gosh, maybe like 5 to 15%, somewhere in that window.
You think 15% of people, 15% of Twitch streamers who found the girls and cuties hot would say that on stream?
Yeah.
I think that you are...
Like, this is assuming you do a good job of trying to wring it out of them. If you just ask the question up front, I think you're really looking at like maybe 1 to 2%. I don't think anybody would like engage with that question on its face, but I think in a conversation you could get them to admit that.
Okay, so just on their own, we're looking at 0.6% of Twitch streamers.
I'm not good at math, but I'll take your word for it. Yeah, maybe 0.6%.
Okay, so you can see why you're saying, you know, Max, you're the only person who thinks this, because I'm the only person saying it. It's a public conversation. We already both agree that there's only 60% of people. I think the number's lower than 60%, but I'll go with your number. Even by your figures, we would expect only about one person to be saying this anyway.
Yeah.
So, right, so that's why your response of like, but hey, but we're all telling you that's not what we're experiencing. Well, by your own estimations of that's what I expect you to say.
Sure.
I expect everybody but me to say that, even if I'm right. And also if I'm wrong. So it's not, to me, it's not conclusive. It's not evidence that I'm wrong. That people are saying like, well, I didn't experience that. I'm like, well, of course you're going to say that.
To be clear, and this is more for the audience, I'm sure that you're aware of this. When we're doing all these percentages, we're already pulling them from a group of people that feel this way about the Cuties movie. And what I'm saying is like the group of people that already felt that way.
We have two hypotheticals. In my hypothetical, that's everyone.
Yes.
So if I'm right, we would still only expect about one prominent Twitch streamer, now me, to say this.
Even in your situation where we assume everybody has it. Maybe. I think there's a lot more smaller Twitch streamers. I think, but we're splitting hairs. It would be like, I would say 2 to 5, but you would say 1. I don't think it makes too big of a difference. Yeah, it would be very, very few.
Yeah, my point is just that you can see how, from my point of view, everybody else in publicly saying this isn't true is actually not evidence against my view or your view.
Yeah, yes.
So I think we just have to leave it that it's inconclusive because self-reporting is unreliable because people don't know how they're feeling all the time and then they lie. So like Twitch streamers are inherently dishonest. Social media is a place to lie about yourself to make yourself look good for money. So we can't pull each other.
Okay.
So I just reject the idea that there is evidence that I'm wrong, but I mean you could be right. You're right. We're talking about things people don't even know they're feeling. So I'm basing it on kind of like other evidence and my other sense of what's going on and a kind of harsh, brutal honesty I try to have with myself, and then like some weird studies that are not super reliable but indicate that. You know, men know, like if you took a ugly girl and a hot girl and put them on an island with 100 non-pedophile prisoners or rapists, I think that if they ended up raping the girls, you would be able to look at the two girls and say, I kind of innately I know which one they're going to rape, and that doesn't mean you're a pedophile. It just means that like you can tell when a 12-year-old is hot. And then so like I think we should just move on to the cuteness conversation because to me that's the same thing. Okay. When you say, oh look, he's so cute or she's so cute, or even a dog, the dog's cute. You're saying that like if something looks like appetizing, you're saying you want to eat it. If you're saying something's cute, you're saying you want to touch it, or you know, it's some kind of physical attraction that I think is pretty adjacent to sex. Sure,
and that would be your take. I do understand that. I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. Like when I was talking with Steven, I think the best way of putting it is aesthetics have an important role to play in these conversations, and I don't see many people, whether it's Vosh or Steven, those are the main two that I've seen you talk with, bring that up with you, is that to find something aesthetically pleasing, is not always this clear one-to-one link with sexual attraction, right? And I think that cute for a lot of people is an aesthetic statement, like, oh, it's adorable because the kid, I don't know, has no blemishes or has big eyes or whatever. They're not picking features that they necessarily think is sexually attractive, and cuteness is not, for a lot of people, an extension of sexual attraction, especially when we're talking about kids. But it's rather like an aesthetic preference.
I would say it's definitely. I wouldn't say it's just aesthetic. So like if I look at a car that I think looks really well, I guess people say cars are sexy. So I'm trying to think of something that's like aesthetically pleasing. Like this Xbox controller. I think this is aesthetically pleasing.
Oh, that's hot.
But it doesn't make me want to smush my face into it.
Right.
You know, it's a different feeling. When I see like my cat, I see my cats, I want to smush my face into them. It's and then they purr and they curl around, and like it's not like I get a boner when I'm cuddling my cat.
Right.
but the urge to caress and touch and feel, like it's a sensual thing. And I think the same thing is true of a cute kid. Like when grandma calls you cute, she's gonna come over, she's gonna kiss you, she's gonna drool on you, she's gonna pinch your cheeks. If you're really young, she's gonna pinch your legs, she's gonna grab your legs, pinch your butt. Like it's a tactile, sensual thing. So I agree that it's not consciously or directly sexual, but it's sexual enough that
for some people,
when Joe Biden does it to somebody who we don't want to see him doing it to, it's weird. Like when you see two other people doing it, you see Joe Biden sniffing your kid, he probably feels the same way I feel about my cat. But from the outside, it's much more clearly sexual. It looks creepy. Because
of the behavior he's engaging in, for sure.
But it seems sexualized, even though it's the same thing I do to my cat. I sniff my cats; they smell good.
Yeah, but we would both agree that's like wrong-headed, right? To think that that's sexual. I don't think Joe Biden is like.
No,
sexually...
I think he's a creep. No, I think he is a creepy sex weirdo.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he's sniffing kids for sexual purposes, despite him and without knowing it.
Okay. But to kind of go back a little bit, you do. I thought you did say kind of like you can see that it's not this one-to-one link between sexual that kind of is implied in your review. That I think for a non-insignificant amount of people, if not the majority of people, it's more of an aesthetic statement than it is one that's like a couple of steps removed from a sexual.
Do we agree that there's do we agree that a cute kid is likely, as they go through puberty, if they're still cute, to become hot? And that even people they'd say, you know, when you're a cute little kid, they say, oh, you're gonna break hearts. Just wait till you get to college.
It would depend
but you've heard people say that, right?
Yes, like lady killer, I think, is something that you've mentioned in other conversations.
Yeah. So when I was 11 or even 8, I remember my older brother's friends saying things like, when Max gets to high school, he is going to break hearts. And I'm like, not only are you picturing me fucking women your age, you're picturing me like not calling them back afterward. Like it's a whole scenario that you've constructed based on how I look now. You're talking about me having sex, girls begging me to have sex with them, and me being like, no, you can't have my dick. And you're saying that to an 8-year-old, and it's perfectly socially acceptable thing to say. I just think that the way I'm kind of bluntly, more explicitly wording what is happening in that interaction, like you're telling an 8-year-old that you find them fuckable or pre-fuckable. And to me, I don't think there's a huge difference between fuckable and pre-fuckable.
Okay, that was going to be my follow-up. Like, I see a huge difference between those two, but as a separate note, I actually do think we should discourage that kind of thing. I do think that that's an uncomfortable thing that we should probably not do, is like this sexualization of these kids or to fit them into
morality aside, you see what I'm saying, that when you say cute and sexy as completely different concepts, I agree that my attraction to my cats is probably very much less tinged with sexuality, but not free of sexuality. And then you know, someone like Shaylin, who I think is, you know, I'm very, very passionately attracted to. That's a more sexual thing. And then there's times where I see a woman looking cute or in a childlike pose or childlike facial expression or lighting or something, and then all of a sudden you find them cute again. I don't think it's I don't think they're separate. I think they're attached to each other, overlapping.
Yeah, I think the only place we disagree is how much they overlap. Like, as a matter of fact, I think there's a lot of use cases of cute where it is almost directly related to sex. So like, if there's a girl in the space and I want to flirt with her and I'm like, oh, you're so fucking cute and like whatever, like that could very well be.
It's a non-threatening way to say I want to fuck you.
Yeah, if we want to word it that way. I think wording it that way sounds extreme, but yeah.
You're saying I want to pinch your cheeks because you're so adorable.
Different.
If a girl says you're adorable, she is also attracted to you.
Yeah, a lot of the time, yeah. It would depend on the context, right? Like for something like that, like if it was like a family member or something like that, I'm not reading that into the situation all the time. Right. But yeah, like if a girl in this space came into my DMs and was like, "Hey, I just saw your stream. You're a really adorable guy." Like, yeah, that's how I'm reading that.
Okay. So you view it as there's sexy, there's cute, there's sections where they overlap here, and then sexy ends, and there's still some more cute over here that doesn't overlap at all. And my view is that it goes all the way.
Yeah. Okay. And to go even further, but this is going to make it more difficult for us to agree. I would say that more often than not, the use of cute, especially with younger people, is outside of that range of the overlap with the sex thing. It could be sometimes, like if I say this 8-year-old is a lady killer, like in your example, and then I say you're cute. That lady killer and cute is pushing it into that weirdo or that weird territory. But if I'm saying like your cat is cute, or if I'm saying like, oh my god, look at this baby, she's so cute, or like, oh my god, look at your dog or your cat or whatever, I think there are more uses of cute that are actually outside of that sexual area than are within it.
Yeah, I guess I just think the cute you're talking about is like an urge to protect, to feed, to take care of.
In part, you know, perhaps, yeah.
Like the way babies are cute, mostly you feel like, oh, I want to just help you. And then there's the urge to fuck. And I think that we feel some of both for everyone to some extent, and the urge to kill, like just these primal urges that are all to varying degrees with varying people.
There is a fuckability number above everybody's head, and we could all put a number there. Yeah, exactly.
And I think Cuties tries to drop the fuckability number for the main characters all the way to the floor when they're chewing on gummy bears and they're falling out of their mouths and they look like developmentally disabled almost. And you're like, oh Jesus, like you're like a 2-year-old. And then it tries to drive the fuckability number up as high as it can go by dressing them like adults, putting makeup on them, having them, you know, twerk and behave as much like a teenage girl as possible. And I think that's the drastic, you know, roller coaster I think that the movie's trying to take you on.
And the success of that, though, varies a lot, right? Like, it was successful for you as described in your own review, but I actually think that throughout the movie, every indication we get from adults in the movie is that it's not working. So like when they're on the FaceTime call and the girl puts on the video, immediately changes the way the guy is interacting with her. Or even those two guys that worked at the laser tag, the one was being a little bit weird and like the other one like corrects him. Or when we get a view of the audience at the end with those sexy dances in those sexy clothes, a lot of the people in the audience were taken aback by that and felt more disgusted than they did liking it. There were a few
That's
people,
true.
but in that way, I think that's mirroring actually how most people would feel about this, and that's why some people, even just seeing the preview or seeing the girls in those outfits on the poster, didn't want to see the movie because they felt that that was gross. They found it more disgusting than they did sexually attractive, I believe.
I agree that that is how most people would react.
Okay.
I think in private, if you put a 12-year-old girl in booty shorts and knee pads twerks for 30 minutes on YouTube, I think you get 20 million views. I think in public, if you say, hey, do you want to watch this girl twerk in front of you on the street, I think most people will say no, because they're not hot to the exclusion of caring that they're children. I think that the discomfort is the people don't react like they're seeing a 3-year-old twerk. Like when you see a 3-year-old twerk, it's not uncomfortable because you're just like, oh look, you're like, oh look, she's twerking, right? It doesn't really click or mean anything to you. I think to most people.
Okay.
Obviously, there are some people that it still does evoke arousal, but I think that's pretty unusual.
Abnormal, yeah.
Yes, I would say that is unusual to the point of being abnormal for sure. I don't know. Actually, I don't even know if I don't know if I want to say that, but I'll say that it's not evocative to most people to the point where they're going to be like okay, if you and I are hanging out and we're in a place where there's like a barbecue or something, right? And a 12-year-old in a bathing suit like drops down to her knees and starts twerking, like shaking her ass all over the place. You and I would both become pretty uncomfortable. I think. In a thong.
Yeah.
Right? We'd be like, oh, hey, somebody should tell her that she shouldn't be doing that. Right? We'd be like, the social norms are being broken. If a 2 or 3-year-old started twerking, nobody, I don't think anybody would care. They'd be like, we'd probably laugh. Because it'd be like, you're trying to look, maybe you're copying a music video, or maybe you're just bouncing around and it happens to look like twerking. Either way, it would be funny because of how completely ineffective it is. Like,
if the 2 or 3-year-old was also wearing a thong and was doing it the exact same way, I think there would still be a level of discomfort as well. Like, I don't
think a 2 or 3-year-old is not capable of moving the same way as a 12-year-old. So there's kind of like an uncanny valley thing that would happen
we
where
could pick like 5 or 6.
I don't even think a 6-year-old is really coordinated enough to twerk. But there's
I'd
some
argue the
6-year-old
girls
dancers.
in the movies weren't, right? Because there was a whole like training arc, and even after that, they
were not totally. They were not the best twerkers.
Which is actually
it's part of the problem. Yeah. It hurts me to say it, but they're not the best workers. I agree.
And that's how I felt through the movie, though. Like what you're describing about the 3-year-old, I still feel about those 12-year-olds. Like there is a discomfort in knowing they're emulating the behavior of these people who are doing it to be sexual, and that makes me feel weird because they may not understand that that's what they're doing.
They understand. They know exactly what they're doing. Don't ever let anybody tell you the difference. Listen, my point is that if you see a 3-year-old twerking at a barbecue, it might make you a little uncomfortable. Not nearly as uncomfortable as a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old.
Sure.
Or an 11-year-old.
I think they're comparable.
I believe the reason is that you have a social awareness that it is a little arousing, and that's very uncomfortable, and that you would react just like the people in the movie did, with discomfort and maybe disgust, and you would feel a need to protect them from themselves. We would need to... Oh shit, my stream stopped.
Oh, but to be clear there, it's not because of my discomfort with my own sexual feeling about it. It's because of
It's not. It's not. It's an objective knowledge that.
Because, like, I totally get your perspective having watched these other things. Like, I feel like I have a mental model for you, and I understand for you. And I just think we're different people that have different reasons for feeling.
My whole point is that we're not that different.
You think that, but you don't know a ton about me or how I feel about these things, and
you don't either. We already established that any mathematical or probability model we apply suits my view. Just as we both agree that it is vanishingly rare that somebody would know that they can be turned on by an 11-year-old twerking and be willing to talk about it on Twitch. So
that they will have sorted through that internally and then will be willing to talk about it on Twitch.
So there's nothing you can say about your experience that
to convince you
that proves that I'm wrong, and there's nothing I can say to prove it. Well, you're bringing up evidence
because it's subjective to the audience. So if the audience believes me and they're willing to take that leap of faith that I am being honest about my internal experience.
Well, I'm not trying to. I don't want to do the pedo fight, so I don't care who the audience believes. I don't want them to believe me over you either. All I'm doing is explaining to you my perspective and explaining why, when you say, well, but Mr. Girl, you're pretty different from other people. My whole point is that I'm not different from other people. That's the whole point of the Cuties review, and a lot of my content in general is to say that we're all more similar to each other and to these supposed freaky outliers than we'd like to think. And so your evidence being, but I'm saying to you, I'm not like that. Well, by your own admission, that of course that's what you and most of us are going to say. So I don't want to argue about whether I'm right or not. I don't want to debate you.
Sure.
You're debating
I think
me.
You're missing what my point there was, though. My point is, you are not going to trust what I say. I can understand why you're not going to trust what I say. But other people can make other determinations, right? We could fill in somebody else in your seat, like Steven or whatever, and they could very well trust what I'm saying. I understand why you don't trust what I'm saying, but we both have people that we're similar to. You could find tons of people who
I think you should acknowledge that. I think you should stop saying it, basically. Like, there's no reason for you to say it. You really would say that if we were at a barbecue and a 12-year-old started twerking, part of the reason it would make you uncomfortable is because you thought they were hot? Do you really think you would say that right now?
If you don't think that I would say that, then why are we asking the question? Because even if I tell you the opposite, you're not going to believe me.
Because we're explaining our different worldviews.
You're asking, but you'll only accept one answer.
No, there's two different things going on. One is, what is your conscious, thought-through answer? And I am interested in that, and that's what you're giving me. But in addition to that, you're saying, and I'm right, and you're weird. And that's what I'm pushing back against. When you keep, I didn't start pushing back against you till you told me, but I think you would be surprised to know that actually you're pretty unusual in this aspect.
Okay, if I said that, I'll adjust that. My intention is to say that, like, there are people who think differently than you. That there are people who will feel uncomfortable for a variety of reasons that I could imagine, and not all of them are sexual in nature.
I guess I don't see a point in saying that.
Because
I don't see a point
you don't believe me when I say that. That's why I'm saying, like, there are other people that exist that are like me, same as there are other people that exist that are like you.
Yeah, but I don't need you to believe me. And I don't think you should need me to believe you. We don't need to agree on this. We have different. That's why we're talking. We have different worldviews. We can compare them without arguing.
Yeah, but I don't feel like you respect my worldview as much as I respect yours, because I'm taking what you're saying at face value and believing you, but you're not believing what I'm saying, which makes it difficult to communicate with you, because you think that I'm lying about my position.
I think you are wrong. And you could be lying about your position, and you have already done a couple things and that make me think that if you had the same position as me, you would take a safer, more defensible stance. I think that in this discussion, I think because some of my beliefs I'm willing to say are because of my own experiences with myself, with others, talking to other people. like I've never met someone in my personal life who was unwilling to tell me which of the cuties they thought were the hottest and why.
Okay.
That's in my experience of the real world, people don't talk the way you're talking.
Well,
none of my friends would be like. I didn't
reject answering that question, right? I don't think I was asked that. And
I don't think any of them would say that the apparatus by which I've arrived at the determination of which of the cuties is the hottest is this hyper intellectual thought experiment. They would just say, "Well, I fucking know because I just consulted my gut."
Could you repeat that a little bit? You cut out. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I don't think that they would say that the reason they know which cutie is the hottest is that this hyper intellectual thought experiment. They would say, I just know because I'm human and I can feel when someone's hot.
But we also agreed that people don't think it through, right? I think if they thought it through a little bit more and sat with it, maybe they could trace back why that immediate answer came into their head and give that to us as well, right?
Maybe. I feel like we're getting derailed from the meta conversation about the conversation. So my point is that it feels like you have a vested interest in arguing with my worldview. Your view in this situation is the one you're espousing is much more common than mine.
Happy New Year.
And I think that
here's the 2022
you're
Booksmarts
doing me a bit of a disservice
by
by assuming that yours is the default and that I have to defend mine because it is not the default on Twitch. My view is the default among like psychologists in my experience. And sexologists and people who study pedophilia
I'm not
and these
arguing
things.
Defaults, to be clear.
I believe that you. It feels like you're. It feels like you're not willing to just say, okay, so you believe that the reason I would be uncomfortable at seeing a 12-year-old twerk at a barbecue more so than a 3-year-old is because I have some innate attraction to the 12-year-old that would clash with my sense that I'm not supposed to be and that it's awkward and they're not mature and they're a child, and so that's what would make me uncomfortable. I don't think you're really willing to just let that stand, that's just what I think. And then when you say, allow me to finish. Allow me to finish. And then when I say that and you push back against it, you'll go a little further to hint that, well, maybe you just think that because you think 12-year-olds are hotter than most people. And essentially, you're essentially well, you said, don't you think that maybe your experience about this is a little different from most people?
No, not from most people, from other people. That there are other people who have a different experience. Because I told you a different experience.
Well, okay, yes, one of the people being you.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, I don't
talk about my experience if that makes you more comfortable.
That's not my point. My point is that you are within the community of two. Fine, just you and me. You have a vested interest, it seems, in pointing out anytime I say, this is what I think, you say, just so everybody knows, I don't agree with that because I think that your innate experience of 12-year-olds is different from mine. And so I know that you're not coming out and saying it, but it feels like you're deconstructing, or it feels like we're debating because you want to say that.
Okay. Can we take?
Wait a second.
I have 2 seconds to respond?
Wait a second. Okay. I've just gotten some information from my chat that you just typed in your chat. Booksmarts, this is getting a bit weird.
Yeah.
Right. So this is another problem.
I didn't say some of the things that you're saying that I said.
That's fine. This is another problem I have with a lot of these debates and conversations is that most of the time the streamer is talking to the chat. They're not actually talking to me.
I'm talking to both.
Well, I'm not the one paying you.
What do you mean?
I mean, you've got another vested interest in, as all streamers do, in communicating more directly with the chat.
Okay.
Than to that, like what I'm doing could be seen as just a performance, and maybe we're not having a conversation at all. Maybe I'm just talking to my chat, and nothing I say to you is. Maybe I don't care what you say in response to what I say. Maybe I just want to impress my chat. I mean, I started reading the chats too because now they're giving me fucking opposition research, so I have to read it.
I haven't had it open until just now. I was like, I feel like I haven't said this stuff, but if they were like, Booksmarts is backpedaling or something, then I would be like, okay, well, I'll ask him, like, when did I say this thing? So yeah, I just barely opened it and typed that. I haven't been looking at it this entire time. You've had my full attention.
Yeah, but if I say you're backpedaling, you wouldn't care.
No, I would. Like, if you point, like every time so far that you've said, like, well, you're saying this, and I'm like, well, did I say that? You're like, well, no, I feel like that's what you're trying to say, or that's what you're trying to get at. And I try to handle each of those when you tell me them. So I do feel like I'm listening really hard. I'm taking notes this entire time. I'm trying really hard to engage with you.
I think that we're at a crossroads.
Okay.
Do you want me to make a joke about 11-year-old android's panties so you can boot me? Or do you want to have a real conversation?
No, I'm not going to boot you, dude. I'm not looking for that opportunity.
Why are you telling them it's getting weird? Why are you whispering to the secrets about me?
So the reason why I said it's getting weird is because I want to have like a vibe check from my chat. Like, am I off here?
Why'd you say it to them and not to me?
I already said it to you. I said I don't feel like you believe what I'm saying. I don't feel like you trust what I'm saying.
That's different from Booksmarts. This is getting weird. Don't try to tell me the same thing. It is because I'm talking to two different people, or two different sets of people. I'm talking to my chat, and yeah, I'm asking you why you're talking to your chat and not me.
I'm talking to both at the same time because I'm streaming right now.
You're saying different things to the chat than you're saying to me.
Yes, I am, because they're a different group of people than you.
Well, you're talking smack. That's what's known on the street as talking smack.
I'll bite that bullet. It is a bit smack talky because I don't feel like you're engaging with what I'm telling you.
I'm not trying to believe what I'm saying. It's obviously talking smack. Why? I want to know why you're doing it. That's all.
Because I don't feel like you're engaging with what I'm saying in the conversation. You're putting words and ideas into.
Well, then why don't you just say that?
Because I already did. I said that to you already. I said that to you before I typed that in my chat.
Okay. So what do you think I'm not engaging with?
So, like I said already, I don't think that you believe what I'm saying is correct or is true or is representative of reality about that 12-year-old situation, or about the cuteness and attraction thing, or about the gauging the hotness, right? You said that you're intellectualizing all that, but I don't think that's how people are working. And even if that is the case, I think because of this percentage scenario that we discussed before, it's difficult to trust you, because I think even if you believed what I believed, you wouldn't tell me that. You wouldn't be honest about that.
Okay, so I don't believe you. Mm-hmm. We established that. I don't think what you're saying is true, either because you're in denial or because you're lying.
This is weird, but it's so interesting that it's so difficult to
logic
have this
that out, right?
I really think you should continue. Just vibe, guys. Booksmarts, MrGirl.
So, how can I? Are you religious?
A little bit, like spiritual.
Okay, and I'm an atheist.
Okay.
So if you're talking to like a fundamentalist Christian, how do you handle, I think your book is wrong, and I don't think there's a devil, and I don't think anything you're saying is true, but I still want to talk to you about it. So how do I respect your beliefs here, or how do you respect mine, with you feeling like I'm engaging with you?
Can I have 2 seconds to think about this?
Yeah, I don't like the fast back and forth. I am fine with a long pause.
So how would you engage?
Talk shit in my chat. What do you think?
If we have like very fundamental disagreements, and you don't believe in the thing that I'm saying is true. Because generally I work around it. Like generally it's not super necessary for the conversation. And even when it is, like, I suppose, and this may be another fundamental disagreement, like I can't know if there's a God, and I can't know if there's an afterlife, I can't know if there's really heaven and hell. Like I would feel pretty dumb if I die and I'm like, oh fuck, the Christians were right, god damn it. Like
so if I'm Christian, either you're a sinner who's going to hell, or I'm deluded and wasting my life praying to something that doesn't exist. And so
way of putting it, for sure.
But like, right, but the thing with the pedophilia shit is that it gets pushed to that because I sense that you're, and I appreciate this about this conversation, that you're not really willing to just let the logical chain go. But if we keep following it, this is why I said let's get off of are the cuties hot, but we got right back into it, because the thing is that if you follow the chain, eventually either I'm a kind of sexual weirdo who is convincing myself that everybody else is more like me than they actually are, and I'm going around spouting this publicly and then getting like irritated and defensive and with this air of superiority and smugness when other people are saying, bro, we're not like that, you're just a fucking weirdo. Or you're in denial to some degree, or you're being dishonest to some degree. And
yes,
you don't want to be seen as dishonest or in denial. And I don't want to be seen as the only guy looking at the blonde one. So it's turning into this wrestling match where we're trying to, and then you're checking with your chat like, hey guys, like, is there, and I'm not like, I don't like that you did that, but I understand why you did it. Like you're checking in to be like, is he winning this fight? Where, like, do you now think that I'm lying? And because if I win, then you're both a sexual weirdo now, just like me, and you tried to hide it and failed, which is bad. And then if you win, it's like, well, like, MrGirl, you're not honest. You're not being more blunt than other people. You're just a weirdo. So, how do we get out of this?
Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
Like bit by bit. Okay. So firstly, with the winning thing, all I want to do is like be an advocate for my perspective, and if you say that it's lying or you say that it's not truthful, I have to swing back harder than I would if you were to just take it for granted and accept that we have different perspectives. So that may be part of why it feels like we're battling. I actually don't really care too much to like convince the audience that they believe one thing about themselves or another thing about themselves, because I think that there are people that believe or feel the way that the both of us feel. There are going to be people that feel the way that you're feeling and feel the way I'm feeling. And then part two.
Wait. Can I ask you something about part one?
Sure.
Why do you need to swing back? Because I think I may also be swinging back, but I don't think we need to.
Okay.
If the Christian wants to have the last word on their side and say like, well, I just know I'm part of God's plan, would you feel the need to say like, if there were a God to have a plan, you might be right, but okay, yeah, go on. Like, you probably wouldn't feel the need to say that. So why do we need to? Why can't we leave it that we don't know and we can't know? Yeah. I think with the hypothetical of the statistics thing, I was pushing for kind of like agnosticism.
I get that.
We can't know who's right.
Sure, and I agree with this. I agree with the agnostic thing is where we're going to land. We can't know for everybody. We cannot read their minds. It would be impossible. Neither of us should argue that like we understand how everybody else works, because that's not possible for us to do. The same way it's not possible for the atheist or for the Christian to know about God. The reason why I'm pushing back so hard, and this may answer why you're pushing back so hard, is because I actually think a better parallel with the religion thing is you're telling the Christian, I don't actually think you believe in a God. I think that that's ridiculous, and I don't really think you believe in a God. Whereas I'm like, well, no, I do believe in a God. You could not believe in the God, but that's my experience, is I do believe in the God. And I'm willing to fight to defend my faith. Like, I do have faith, right? And that's what's inspiring that kind of pushback.
Okay, let me ask you this then. Do you think it's possible to have sexual feelings you're not aware of?
Yeah. Like subconscious things, kind of like Oedipus complexes and Freudian stuff and all that, definitely.
Okay. So, it is... Your experience.
You're right. Possible.
Well, I guess what I'm saying. I'm saying that your experiential arguments against that don't matter, and so I don't mean to be dismissive, but if I say you unknowingly feel XYZ, I think your only two places you can go there are, or I guess three, is I don't think I have feelings I don't know about. Or there's no way I can argue with that. It could be true. Or I feel like where you are going is I don't want people to think that's true, or I don't want to have feelings like that.
Yeah,
and I know nobody wants. Nobody wants to be sexually attracted to like minors.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to be sexually attracted to 18-year-olds. It's not because like I don't want to date 18-year-olds. It's not convenient.
Right.
So I feel like you have to pick one, of like.
No, I'll be agnostic. The door is open. It is quite possible that there is some subconscious thing I can never touch that actually has me attracted to kids in some way that I actually have no ability to reach with my conscious brain. That is possible. But like the God example, like the faith example, it's something neither of us can prove, because I can't dig through my subconscious to find that thing that by definition is impossible to find. You can't, because you don't live in my body.
But
so,
in your daily experience, do you feel like you see or sense repressed emotions in other people, that they believe things or feel things that they don't know that they're feeling?
Yeah.
Okay, so in that sense, I don't feel like it's that much of a break about what we both know. We both repress a lot of things. The question is what things, and there's no way to know, at least in this conversation. There's no way for us to guess in the kinds of questions we would need to ask each other to try to get a more educated guess. We don't want to ask. We don't like you don't. We don't want to start detailing our sexual fantasies to each other. Like we're not going to go there. So I feel like the
you could if you want.
I don't. So I feel like the more and I don't believe that you do either. I think that was a joke.
I think it's funny, but yeah, I would enjoy it.
It's funny, but I don't think that you want to discuss your sexual fantasies with me.
I actually would be okay with that. I don't know. I don't get to talk about it on stream much, and if I was forced to in this conversation, I actually wouldn't mind.
Okay. I think we would run into the same problem immediately, where I would say, I don't think these are your real sexual fantasies.
Do you ever find that that's less helpful, since you can't, like, it makes like people's testimony about their personal experiences not helpful for you at all? Like even asking these questions, because you can't trust any of the answers?
I think since we're talking about something that everyone wants to not be true about themselves, your answers are interesting, but they're not that meaningful to me.
Okay.
No, because we're talking about things that we don't want to believe, and things we don't want to think about, and things we don't want to feel.
Sure.
So, and I think that's part of what I was trying to say in the Cuties review, that why I think I'm uniquely able. I think what is unique about me is that I'm, or maybe just among social media people, that I'm okay with it. I'm more comfortable with disgusting aspects of my sexuality than I think your average person, at least your average content creator.
Of your internal thought processes too, like one recurring theme we saw with your conversations on the stream, because again, I'm like the rhetoric and theme guy, and I look at like, how are people communicating? How are they perceiving things? What's their perspective? You often give voice to, I think, these back of the head thoughts that people have, these call of the void thoughts, they're really uncomfortable bringing to the surface and being real about, like your school shooter discussion that you had with Steven, or that story. Like, yeah, I think most people have thought about like doing harm onto other people, even if they like them. Like it could be in a dream, it could be just like a passing thought. And I think to deny that is off. And I like that you do that you're like honest about that stuff.
I appreciate that. Okay, so I think to move forward here, I want some kind of a ceasefire where I won't, like, it's just a fact that I think you're in denial or that you're lying. But I'm not trying to judge you, and if you keep pushing me into saying that, I'll keep saying it, but I'm only saying it to just be like blunt and as a disclosure. I don't think you're particularly more in denial than any of us are in general. I think we're all in denial about all kinds of things, including me, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just a necessary conclusion of the way my view clashes with yours. And I think we can both agree that you think that it's not that I'm more aware of bizarre sexual feelings or predilections I have, it's that I have more of them. And I think that if we just agree that you think that follows from your beliefs, and my thing follows from my beliefs, and I think we both also agree you might rather be seen as a little more careful and cautious on stream than be seen as a pedophile, and I'd rather be seen as a pedophile than be seen as more careful and cautious on stream, then I I don't think we have to keep hammering at each other there.
Fair enough. I can agree to all that. The only little asterisk I'll give, and I'm so sorry for having an asterisk, is
No, it's fine.
I actually don't think you have more of these thoughts than anybody else. And if I've communicated that, like, I don't really want to. Like, I don't think you have more bad thoughts or more of these feelings about whatever. I think there are plenty of people that are just like, I wouldn't describe it as like more.
Well, then what do you think the difference is between you and me that makes me say in my review that Cuties was good at making me attracted to 12-year-olds? Why did I say that? How do you explain the difference between us?
We felt differently about the actors and their portrayals in the movies. You were able to feel that way about those kids. I can understand.
Why? You're saying with a better movie you would have felt attracted to the 12-year-olds if they had done a better job?
With a better movie, would I have been attracted to the 12-year-olds if they had done a better job? They definitely could have done a better job. Do I think at some point they could have Hold on. I see you like face pop or whatever. Do I think there's a point? I think what you're asking is, do I think there's a point at which they could do such a good job of sexualizing them that even I would feel something? Yes. I think there is some point where they sexualize them so much to where even I felt sexually attracted.
Your use of the word "even" there implies that it's easier to make me attracted to a 12-year-old than you.
Well, based on the objective, like, that you saw that movie, you felt that way. I saw it, I didn't, but I could see some point in the future, then that would be the even.
Okay, so I don't need the whole loop around. You can just say I'm more of a pedophile than you are. It's faster.
Sure, if we're on that histogram thing that you talked about in your conversation with Steven, yeah, I think you're probably further along than me, but I don't think that's a value statement.
That's... whether you're okay with it or not, I don't think you need the asterisk. You think I'm more of a pedophile, and I think you're more of a liar. And that's... I would rather be seen as a pedophile than a liar.
Okay.
You'd rather be seen caught in a lie. Like when I said that my chat told me that you told your chat that it's getting weird, right? You were caught in somewhat of a lie there. You were sort of being sneaky. You got called out.
I didn't lie to you.
You didn't. Okay, I think it's sneaky.
Sneaky.
It's more dishonest than pedophilic. We can agree with that, right?
Sure.
Okay. I think that if my chat suddenly outed you as being some kind of pedophile, your reaction would not be like, yeah, you're right. You would be like, oh fuck, this is a big fucking problem. So I don't think we need the asterisk. I think you think I'm more pedophilic than you, and I think that you're more in denial or repressed. And
okay, and we can agree on that. Move forward. that I can agree on.
All right, cool. All right, what's the...
Oh, you cut out there. What was that?
Oh, I said, what's the next step here?
All right, I have a bunch of stuff. So, if you want to get back into aesthetic, that discussion about aesthetics versus sexual stuff, I feel like we're making progress at like finding a place where we agreed. But at the same time, I feel like I kind of know where we would land. If you want to go back to that, we could. Like how...
cute versus sexy versus cute.
Yeah, and like how much it's tied to sexual attraction versus like, oh, I want to cuddle this thing.
Yeah. So if you accept Destiny's wall of like, if you're attracted to people below this wall, you're a very unique outlier, and it's probably not going to just happen once. It doesn't taper off. Then your definition of cute versus sexy makes more sense. And if you think that you have some innate attraction to all humans, then it has to be like a spectrum of sorts with all different, shapes and dots all over it.
I'm more of spectrum belief. One thing that we haven't gotten into from the Destiny conversation is I think that his firewall of binary, where like a spectrum for pedophilia doesn't start until after we've had at least one, and then you're automatically a pedophile, and it's just a question of how much of a pedophile you are. I don't personally ascribe to that. I'm more of your opinion that like everybody probably has like a pedophile number, whatever, above their head, and they fall on a spectrum of that.
So are you just saying that then
if you're saying to some degree we're all attracted to 11-year-olds,
but could be, yeah.
We are, or we could be.
I think that's the same thing, right? Depending on the scenario that we present you, we could make you attracted to an 11-year-old, or depending on the 11-year-old, that you could be particularly attracted to them.
Well, obviously, depending on the 11-year-old. Okay, so you're saying that we all have some non-zero attraction to 11-year-olds that can be manipulated through different situations. But you're saying it's there. It just could be vanishingly small.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I doubt it's vanishingly small for most people, to give like a point to your side, but yeah.
Okay. And then you're saying that cuteness, you're saying that's not part of cuteness. That is a separate thing.
I actually think what you said, that there is some overlap there between that cuteness and the sexy, but I also think that cuteness in its usage extends beyond that into territory that has absolutely nothing to do with sexuality as well.
Okay, so I think what I believe is that when you want to protect a child, you want to protect it to continue your bloodline. We protect babies and children and things that look like babies and children, like cats, because of an innate desire to spread our DNA. Okay. I think that's the pull of cuteness. And I think that's the same reason that we fuck things. And the fact that they're used interchangeably after a certain age, like people of all ages can be cute, but if they, as it's more socially appropriate to want to fuck them, or actually desirable, then cute takes on a sexual connotation, and then when you get into your late 60s or 70s. Clint Eastwood stops being hot and he becomes cute again. A non-threatening cute old man. Sure. I still find him handsome, but just as an example, the fuckability drops and cuteness remains. So I guess just for me, because they're intermingled in language and in thought, and I've had the experience of thinking I just wanted to protect someone and then realizing I actually wanted to fuck them also, or had the experience of one turning to the other rapidly and it being really confusing. I think, I think that there's always some element of fuckiness in cuteness, a sexual attraction, in adoration.
Okay. I'm actually liking that we had our big spat, because it's actually given me more insight into how repressed feelings kind of fit into your worldview and interpretation of stuff. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, because you're saying that when people call something cute, they're not consciously thinking, they don't mean, or they're not experiencing a sexual attraction.
In some cases, it goes both ways.
And I'm just saying that part of what they're experiencing is just below the water.
Okay. So and 100% of the time, you think it's?
I think there is something below the water 100% of the time. Dang. I do not think that.
How
I don't think that when you can't know what it is. You can never know what it is.
Then how do you know it's 100%?
I don't know that either. That's just my kind of spectrum-y worldview of
But it's not
you can never know everything you're feeling.
Sure, but not knowing means that there's some probability that's unknown to you, but a probability nonetheless. But you're assuming, well, it's always got to be that it's the sexual thing, even though we don't know, right? That's where I'm confused there.
I guess what I'm saying is that there's always some sexual component to finding something, or at least finding a person cute, and you don't know what it is. Sometimes you feel it and are aware of it and mean it, and sometimes you intentionally are trying to convey it when you say cute. And then I think when grandma's pinching your cheek when you're 5, I don't think she means to be sexual toward you, and I don't think Joe Biden means to be sexual towards kids when he's sniffing them, but I think that I think it's there. I think it's there. I'm not saying it's a bad, lurking, evil, horrible thing and that it should never happen.
Sure.
But I think with Joe Biden, it becomes uncomfortable when other people can see it and he can't. Yeah. Or some of us see it and some of us don't, and
it becomes like a weird. Not good.
Right, because it's like that's supposed to be under the surface, but it's like poking out.
Well, because the optics of the things that he's doing, they're like strange. Like if he just said, "Oh, you're such a cute little girl," and just left it at that, that would be fine. It's the sniffing and stuff that's weird for the behavior. But I don't think, like, if he went to a bunch of like a girls' school and he's like, "I've seen so many of you cute, young, bright individuals who I think are gonna, like," I don't think that would be weird. But the sniffing is strange.
It's strangely uninhibited. I don't think it's that strange that he wants to do it. I feel like we all want to rub our faces on things that we think are cute. I think it's strange that he doesn't know that he shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, he should have more social awareness for sure. To respond to this though, now this kind of, there's always something lurking beneath the surface. There's the possibility that you don't know it, but the sexual thing is what's pushing you to say something like, "I think that you're cute." You think that despite not knowing what the probability is there, that you're going to assume that every time you use that cute thing with another human being, there is a sexual component that you either are or aren't aware of, but it's always there. Am I understanding?
Yeah, I think that's how it's almost semantic, but I think that's how I define cuteness.
Okay. Because I think, and how many other folks have you? No, I won't bring other people in this because that's gonna derail us again. Do you think that this cute thing also applies to like inanimate objects or animals and stuff too? That there's like a low-key sexual component to it when people are using it?
With animals a little bit, but I think we like animals that look like babies, so I think it's very, very muted and minimal. I will say, if bringing other people into it, that when I talk about this stuff in the real world, in my personal life, everybody's like, "Well, yeah, of course." Like, it's not seen as strange or controversial in the circles in which I travel, or some of it, people might be like, "Okay, that's an interesting way of thinking of it," but like there's not a lot of pushback. And then in online world, it's obviously, I mean, you know the reaction. Well,
you're also on like debate Twitch things as well. Like you're talking to people that they're looking for anything they disagree with you on to argue with you, and that's like their whole shtick.
True, but like the reaction to the Cuties review, like I guess lately I've gotten more feedback of people being like, "Yeah, I actually agree with your review. I think it was a really good video. I don't know what people's problem was." So I don't know.
It was a good video. Like, and you don't have to agree with everything in that video to think it's good either. Like, I can disagree about the kid and the hotness thing, but you had good commentary on the themes, and you even caught things that we missed when we watched it. And we went back in the Netflix show, and we like went back and we're like, "Oh, that is like when she climbed under the bed. I didn't catch that was because she couldn't finish tying her shirt, or like there were other things you picked up on." Yeah. So it was a good video.
I appreciate that.
And to get back to the cute thing, if there are scenarios with animals where you'll accept that the sexual thing isn't coming in, or with inanimate objects where that sexual thing isn't lurking under the surface and coming in, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to then also concede at least a little bit that there are some uses of cute person on person that have nothing to do with a sexual component, that we can't know for sure whether or not that's the case. But if we were God and we lifted the veil and looked at those subconscious things, there's plenty of uses of cute people to people where that's not at all influencing it.
I don't think I will concede that.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. Like if you buy a girl a cute purse, she'll be excited, but not really horny. And this is what I picture in my imagination. But when you're going to a park, actually, a friend of mine has a dog that sits in his living room, and I started calling him the panty dropper, because his job is that when his roommate, who's also my friend, brings a girl over, the dog charms her out of her underwear and gets her into bed. And I feel like if you go to a park and if you've got a dog with you, you can women get horny when they see a cute dog. And you can say they get horny because they relate your relationship with the dog, but I feel like, yeah, I guess that's true. But it feels like puppies make women horny.
They make men more attractive, for sure.
Because if it's an old dog, they don't get as horny. If it's a yippy little puppy,
I think that gets closer to cute than it does horny. Like to get back to that.
But they're more likely to have sex with you right after.
With a younger dog than an older dog, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it does bring out a more fatherly side of you. So
yeah, it's like, oh, look, he takes care of like old rescues or something. Like, that's so cute.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So if a woman sees a dog by itself, is that sexual? I don't know. Thinking about cute little babies, I feel like it's not the babies themselves that are sexy, but it's the idea of having a baby, and then you want to have sex to have a baby. I guess I just still think it's all intertwined. Whereas I think a cute purse, I think the meaning of cute then is a little different. I think it's a different emotion.
Different people probably use it differently too. Like for you, this may be true all the time. For me, this may be true all the time. Yeah, because like it's such a varied word. It's such a common word, and it's used in so many different scenarios. Some which are sexual, some which I will admit there is a possibility that there's sexualness, right? Like with a close friend. Like if I'm like, no, you look cute today, whatever. Like, could that be pushed to the point where I go from thinking it's cute in an innocent sense to, and like a protecting sense to like cute as in like I find you attractive? Like, yeah, maybe there is something being repressed there, and I think the probability is higher without even knowing. But if it's like a random like little kid on the street and they do something cute, I don't think that there's some like repressed sexual thing there. I think that's much less likely given my other engagements with children or with animals. Like given my other engagements with animals, I'm not sure if there's a repressed thing there.
Yeah, I guess I probably think all interactions are sexually tinged to some degree, including this one. And I think that if you believe that, then I think it's sort of meaningless for me to say that cute is always sexual. So I'll concede that if you see a kid like do something cute on a street with like a basketball or something, that the amount of sexuality and whatever you say about it is so small that I'll agree with you that it basically is meaningless. But I think because I also believe we don't know, I think I have a more kind of protective and cautious stance about it, where I don't I would never tell a child that they're cute, because I think it's weird to objectify them. Because if my worldview is I don't know if I'm saying something sexual, then I am very careful to not.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's smart. That's a smart way to do it, like given your other belief. And it actually gets me more thinking about my use of cute, because like I already said before, and I hate to bring the audience thing into it, I think there's a non-insignificant number of people that think the same way that you do, that may view my usage of cute to a kid or something as like weird because there could be a sexual angle to that, especially not knowing who I am if I'm like a stranger or something. So you talking about this and sharing your perspective, that's why I think it's valuable, because I think other people believe this and it's going to help me, like, I don't know, expand the way that I see the world and how people interpret like my own behaviors.
Oh, cool. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I think you make people feel more comfortable with admitting things that are in the back of their head that I think we need to be more okay with admitting, like the school shooting thing, or even like this Cuties thing. Like I told people while we were watching it, if you felt sexually attracted, particularly at the beginning with the girl in like the tight leather pants doing her like dance, you don't know who this character is. She hasn't turned around.
Yeah, that's on purpose for sure. They're trying to make you. They're trying to trick you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And does that mean that the whole purpose of the movie is kind of built around that? No, it's probably more incidental, and I'm sure both you and I believe that. Maybe it wasn't the director's intent or the creator's intent, but it's certainly something that's happening for like people enough to where it was a problem, you know, reception-wise.
Supposed to, yeah. I think the movie's supposed to be confusing.
Okay.
Yeah, and that shot is like the best example of that for sure.
Sure.
It's the only explicit moment that is obviously supposed to be confusing.
Yeah. And I think any other time we get close to like being overtly sexual or whatever, it seems to be very intentionally undercut by whether that's the director or the screenwriter. So like, for instance, when she's like unbuttoning her pants to give herself to the uncle to try and get the phone back, like he immediately rejects it, pushes her, and we don't really go further with that. Or the Omegle talk, like we discussed before, or when they talk to the teenage boys at the park, we undercut all of those. And so she seems to want to communicate at that.
Wait, what are you saying that is trying to communicate?
That oftentimes when we do get into these sexual scenarios outside of that very first one, whether meant to be sexually appealing or doing something sexual, it always seems to be undercut by the adults and older people around them to tell them, I actually don't feel that way despite you doing this.
Right. Yeah, I feel like in real life, it is much more likely that these girls would be abused somehow by one of these people.
Unfortunately.
Right. Like I feel like it's a bit rainbows and sunshine to show every single adult that they make some like advance to do the responsible thing immediately and push them away.
And yeah, and to be fair, some of the adults did respond to it, right? But they're often contrasted by other adults on the screen. So like the other employee at the laser tag was like they were doing twerking and shit. Or that guy that looked like Mr. Mooten in the crowd who's like, yeah, with the headphones. But you have the other, like the mom and her kid who's like, what the fuck are we watching, right?
Yeah. That's true. There are a couple. But not to the extent that they think you'd think they're predators. It just seems like they're kind of like creepy.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think we're doing better at understanding each other and communicating more fairly now versus earlier? I feel like we started out rough.
Yeah, kind of. I also think we just agree on most of the stuff you're saying now.
Okay. That does make it easier.
Yeah.
Although we agree to different extents, right? Like I'm willing to admit the parts of what you're saying that I agree with. You're willing to admit the parts that I agree with, or give me more context. Like thinking every situation is to some extent influenced by sex means that to push on that point on any one of them when it could be like infinitesimally small or something makes it maybe not worth like arguing about. And I like that about you. I think that's part of what makes you a good communicator is that balance that I see when you're talking with people.
Yeah, I think that you convinced me that the utility of calling it sexual drops off at a point where it's probably not meaningless, but because of the unknown factor, I think that interactions with kids where you're talking about how they look and how you like how they look, you should probably be careful. And I think part of being careful is assuming that you are capable of sexualizing the interaction, and certainly capable of making them feel like you did, and should just keep an eye on it. Yeah.
I actually think that happens in movies and stuff too, right? Like little girls kind of misunderstand when like an adult in their life that they find attractive or that they're attracted to is like, oh, you're so cute, or you're adorable, or you've got a good head on your shoulders, or any of these remarks they're interpreting in a sexual way. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, from the child's perspective, that's something to keep in mind as well, that they could interpret it that way pretty easily.
Yeah.
So, let's see here. I want to talk a little bit about like rhetoric and optics, since that's like a big focus on my channel. This is going to be a fun one. You know that throughout your life, when you say certain things or your delivery of particular ideas can lead people to feel uncomfortable or like lead to like adverse reactions to things that you're saying, even though you think that these people would agree with me, like the school shooter thoughts. I think a lot of
I'd say the adverse reaction is often because they agree with me. I would even go further than that. Yeah.
Okay. I actually think that may be true. They may agree with you, but they may be repressing it. And I think what may be triggering the repression is seeing how you deliver that belief. seeing you communicate the belief makes them want to other themselves from it because it's associated with the way that you said it.
I don't agree with that. I think it certainly doesn't help. But if you were like, if you're like, man, I want a cheeseburger, and I was like, I want a fucking cheeseburger too, man. Like, no matter how I deliver it, it's not going to make you be like, actually, I don't like cheeseburgers. I don't think I can cause someone to repress a belief or feeling like in the moment like that. But I do think if you have some propensity already for wanting to distance yourself from something, and then I will agree that I'm not making it safe for you to come out on the limb.
Yeah. Like, I think more people would be afraid to, for instance, say that they enjoyed the Cuties movie because you and other people, frankly, like, mentioned how it could be used for like sexualizing children, or how it could be fat material for pedophiles, or having that kind of stigma around it and talking about it in that way makes it more difficult to admit certain things about that movie. And same with some of these thoughts in your head. Like, it makes it more difficult for me to admit that maybe I do have some ideations about like killing my classmates or something when it's in the context of how you're delivering it, versus like if I got them alone in a room and I tried to be like super duper careful and persuasive, I could easily get it out of them, right?
And with Cuties, I mean, if you see the, you know, death threat dogpile on me, like, you're going to be less likely to say whatever it was I was saying about Cuties, even if you agree.
Oh yeah. Or like in that classroom, if you look around, you see everybody's like, oh my god, this guy might kill us all. You're like, oh, okay, I don't believe in that shit either. No, this guy's fucking crazy. Like, yeah, for sure. Have you?
I guess I don't take responsibility for that, though. I think that's the teacher's fault. In the classroom story, I think it's the teacher's fault. And on Vosh's stream, I think it's Vosh's fault.
Okay. Do you ever feel like it's your fault? Like you could have done a better job of communicating or presenting the idea to get more people to admit or agree with you?
But that's not my goal. So yeah, it's my fault that didn't happen, I guess. But I'm not trying to do that. I know how to get people to admit. I know how to get people to admit to shit. I'm not trying to do that. I know how to, like, ease somebody into talking about or doing something that they find uncomfortable. I just don't want to.
Okay. And that was going to be my follow-up question, is like, number one, I want to know if you know that that's there, and number two, like, are you making the decision against being that way, against being more persuasive? Do you
It feels dishonest.
I get that a lot as the rhetoric guy, because like what I always tell people is like, well, you want to communicate your idea in the way where it's going to click with more people can at least respect or understand where you're coming from. I think that's oftentimes, whether people think so or not, their goal in communicating is they want to be heard, they want to be understood at the very least. And then it is nice if you could also get agreement out of the other person, or bring out of them that they feel that way as well, or that I didn't feel that way before, I didn't think I did, but actually you mentioning this, I do. I would think that, like,
yeah, it's much more persuasive.
Yeah. Doesn't it make you happy to have that happen more often?
No.
No.
To have people agree with me or to persuade people, I don't want to persuade. If somebody agrees with me, even though I said something in an unpersuasive way, I'm much more comfortable with that than if I know I led them in a loop and got them to it. And I don't want to communicate that way. That, like, the first thing I said in the classroom of discussing the school shooting was, anybody who says they've never thought about shooting 32 people is lying. And the point of the sentence is that you're lying.
Okay.
And so I'm not trying to get them to stop lying by saying that. I'm trying to not lie myself. I'm trying to say, like, what the fuck are we all talking about? What are you guys talking about? Like, stop. And the goal of that is not actually to create affect a shift in the conversation where they do stop. It's like a protest.
Okay.
And it's like an emotional expression. Like
I want to say it because I'm thinking it. Like, there's no way to protest people not saying what they're thinking by also not saying what I'm thinking. If I'm thinking you're lying, and then I think, okay, well, what's the most diplomatic way to say this? Then I'm immediately doing the thing I'm trying to get people to stop doing.
Yes. But I don't think you have to lie to be persuasive.
I can't I don't believe that. I mean, like, I've had a lot of people give me this feedback where they're like, you know, if you could just like tweak your messaging a little, and I'm like, I don't want to. That you're telling me to sand off the rough edges, when the rough edges are the point of what I'm saying.
That's interesting, because I actually think, like, I think you can still be completely truthful and say everything you mean to communicate, but present ideas, questions, things like that in a different order. This is
a nightmare. Wait, no, what you're saying is a horrible nightmare.
Well, I haven't even explained, like, what the recommendation is yet. Like,
oh, God.
Like...
Okay, I'll sit through it, but I hate it. I hate what you're about to say.
So... let's say that there are three things you want to say that are personal truths, and this is your protest to people. Like, I believe A, I believe B, and I believe C. And you guys are not saying you believe A and B and C, but I know that you do. Let's say that in one scenario, if I said A, B, and C in that order, we get 10% of people that understand you and are like, yeah, I feel the same way. Let's say that if instead of saying it in that order, we said C, B, A, and that made it 90% of everybody was willing to admit the thing that you think they already believe. My advice, for instance, here, and it doesn't change the truth of whatever you said, because you're still saying...
It does. You can't say that reordering what you're saying doesn't change the meaning.
No, I'm not saying changing meaning. I'm saying it doesn't make it untruthful. You're still saying the same truths, just in a different order. It's a presentation.
What I'm talking about is not the truth of what you're saying. It's the truth of how you're communicating. My definition of liar is very expansive, and okay. I would say that if I'm thinking, I burnt the stir fry that you told me to watch, but I ordered a pizza and it's going to be here in 20 minutes. If that's what I'm thinking, but then I say to Shaylin, dinner's going to be ready in 20 minutes, but we're having pizza instead because I burnt the stir fry, but the pizza's going to be here. It's the same information presented in order to make her less angry. And so if I'm thinking one and then I rejigger it to be the other one, I think I have to admit to myself that what I'm doing. It's not a lie, but it's not exactly honest. It's padding and placating, and it's a bit manipulative.
Strategic, for sure.
It's strategic, exactly, and so I get what you're saying, but I feel like communicating that way regularly, if I'm going to say something that people find upsetting, I would rather just let them get upset. I don't think not upsetting people is a good value. Okay. Really, I don't. It's not. Even if them being upset is preventing them from agreeing with me, I'm not saying it because I want them to agree with me. The whole premise of your feedback is a bit off, because you're implying that I wanted the conversation with the class to go like they were going to say, oh, if you've never thought about shooting 32 people, if you say that, then you're lying. Wow, that's a really insightful thing to say, Max. Now that you say it, I have thought about shooting 32 people. That was so, so thoughtful of you. Thank you for saying that. I know that's not going to be their reaction. Yeah. Now, I didn't know their reaction was going to be to, call the police, but... Right. Yeah. But
therein lies kind of where I'm going with it. Like, yeah, there are a bunch of reasons. So there could be the persuasive reason. There could be the I want to hear other people parrot what I'm saying. But there could also be the, like, I don't want the absolute worst scenario where I get the worst consequences of everything simply because of the order that I pick to say things. Like,
that's not the absolute I mean, like, if I wanted to make it worse, I could just say
sure.
You people are so fucking stupid that I bet if I brought a fucking gun to school tomorrow and aimed it at your fucking face, you'd probably still tell yourself the same fucking lies as I blew your stupid brains out. That would be the worst possible thing I could say.
Yes.
But I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
You believe that, do you? Wouldn't that be as truthful as the other things? Why didn't you say it that way?
I believe. Yeah, I'm not arguing for total unfilteredness.
Oh.
And I'm not saying you should blur. I'm not saying if you see an attractive woman on the street, you should be like, nice boobies. I'm not saying that we should all blurt out whatever we're thinking all the time. That's not what I'm advocating for. I'm advocating for a shift in a more humanizing, blunt, direct. Yes, it would be the most honest thing you could do would be to blurt out a string of incoherent thoughts. And I understand that you feel to some degree that is what I'm doing. But I feel what I'm doing is I know there's a social norm here, but I think it should just be like here. I think we can handle this.
Yeah.
And you send me to jail, and I still say, I still think you're wrong. I think you're just wrong. And then, you know, the district attorney comes in and he's like, well, maybe we are wrong. So you know, in a year we'll drop the charges.
Sure.
And then they did. So it's like, I know I'm on the edge of what is socially acceptable and talking about some of these topics, and a lot of times I'm not. So I'm not. Most of my videos are not transgressive. Right? A lot of my videos are like lukewarm takes about lukewarm topics.
Delivered in a upsetting way.
A lot of them aren't upsetting.
They're delivered in an upsetting way.
A lot of them aren't delivered in an upsetting way. A lot of them can't be delivered in an upsetting way. Like when I interview epidemiologist and she says social media is really screwing us up because people are believing anti-vax shit, and now we can't trick people or we can't convince people again. She did not say trick. We can't convince people into getting vaccinated. They think we're trying to trick them. I mean, I guess to some people that's controversial, but it's not presented in a controversial way, or like.
I mean, to use an example that we already have on the table, the Cuties
like action movies are immoral. I made a video called "Action Movies Are Immoral," where I said it's immoral to glorify righteous violence and always keep the blood off the main character's hands somehow, but at the last second the bad guy pulls out a gun and gives them an excuse to kill them, so it's not framed as murder, so we get to have our cake and eat it too. That's not controversial or transgressive. Women shouldn't wear makeup. Okay, it's worded in a transgressive way somewhat, but it's not. You're not going to have like people on Twitch doing the rounds interviewing me about why I said women shouldn't wear makeup. It's not that transgressive. So you're making it sound like saying things in the most upsetting possible way all the time, but this was 15 years ago in it almost.
Sure. Yep.
So like there's the Virginia Tech, and then 15 years later there's Cuties, and yeah, I got suspended in high school and some stuff, but so, like
I already don't think you're doing it the most upsetting way possible. You're making a decision not to do it the most upsetting way possible, and because you're already making that decision, you recognize there's a runway to be much worse. I'm saying like you already made this arbitrary decision to be here.
But I didn't want to. The thing I said about bringing a gun to class and how stupid everybody is, I didn't want to say that. I said the thing. What I wanted to say. I had a thought. I said, this is a good thought. I want to say this, and I want to be able to say this. I think I should be able to say this. I think I should say it. And even if I think that you're not going to be able to handle it, I think you should handle it, or you should learn to handle it. So I'm going to fucking say it anyway. That's my thought process. It's more like there's something I want to say, and then I have these inhibiting thoughts of like, well, are you sure that's a good idea? And I say, yeah, Booksmarts, I am sure it's a good idea, and then I just say it anyway.
Okay. And All I'm trying to give you advice for is like avoiding the worst of consequences. That's where I'll start. I'll go back from like, you could be more convincing to people, you could get more people to admit that they believe in what you believe. I'll move away from that and I'll move all the way back to like, we're avoiding the worst consequences possible already. You're making a decision to do that by not saying in the most inflammatory way you could imagine possible. So why not be a little bit better to avoid things like getting banned on Twitch or something like that, right?
Declawing what I'm saying, so for money or for social praise is the worst consequence possible.
Although I didn't say at any point it would be for like money or social praise at this point.
Well, you said so I don't get banned on Twitch.
Sure.
No, that's for money.
Are you on Twitch only for money?
Money. Mm-hmm. And then artistic expression or political expression, so people can hear me. Yeah. And money and self-expression. Okay.
You could express yourself for longer and to express yourself more and to more people, frankly, if you just make a couple little compromises or move in that direction a little bit.
But then I won't be expressing myself. I'll be expressing a compromised version of myself, and I would rather get banned.
Okay. Do you think there is compromise in, for instance, changing the order in which the thoughts pop in your head?
Yes.
And you think that's a significant difference?
I think it's more significant than you are. I think if the deal with the devil that my audience is making is, I will give you myself as directly and straightforwardly as I can. I'm not going to say it's unfiltered, because it is filtered. It's thought about, and it's written, it's edited, and it's shot, and it's carefully lit and everything. It's filtered, but it's my filter, and it's my filter I'm choosing because I think it's right, and I'm going to say and do what I think is the right thing to do. Okay. And that I'm on a moral and artistic crusade, and I promise you, I'm going to tell you what I think is the truth. The trade-off for that is I cannot, if that's what people are buying into, I cannot then say, but I also didn't want to upset you or provoke you too much, so I reworded this a little bit just so it would go down easier, because I don't want to get banned.
Sure. In case it wasn't clear, I totally understand this. That you have an artistic image, you have something you're going for, and compromising on that image is something you're not willing to do. That you. So
so either you're saying I should, or you're trying to change my definition of compromise.
Right now, I'm just saying I'm just trying to make sure that we're on the same page. That I understand what you're saying with the artistic thing.
Yes. Okay.
Cool. And then. I guess like it would almost be like, oh, go ahead.
You're like the devil on my shoulder. You're the voice in my head.
I'm like a PR rep. I'm like your PR person. Like I want your art to get to as many people as possible.
You don't actually have a PR person.
Oh. I don't envy their position.
Yeah. His job is to tell me when I can't post something.
Okay. So he's the thumbs down guy. He's the guy that says, "Ooh, too spicy, too hot for TV," kind of deal.
No, too boring.
Oh, too boring.
He tells me when things are too long, or when nobody gives a shit about them. So like when I bought my drone, I made a video about me and Shaylin testing the drone, and us fighting about the drone, and me like yelling at her, and then flying the drone around, and like and he was like, you could post this on Patreon, but then what does that say to the patrons? I'm gonna give you the video that was too shitty to post on the main channel. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, it's boring. He was like, listen, every time someone comes to the channel, it should be like there's like a treat waiting for them. This isn't a treat. And then I said, okay.
So he determines the worth of your art and is a filter between other people, the whole world, and your art and your message. So he stands between other people and actually hearing what you wanted to communicate in the first place.
Yeah, he's the friend when you have beer goggles.
His job is to approximate after the beer goggles wore off and I wake up in the morning, what am I going to think of myself and the person I had sex with? And his job, he's trying to be the future MrGirl. I've come back through time to tell you that video was boring and it was a mistake.
Okay. I guess if I were to think about like my goal being to help this filter along and to improve it, because I do think you have a filter, which you've already discussed, right?
I can tell you that he's going to be very angry. If he's watching this now, he's going to be exceedingly angry at you, and it's particularly what you're about to say. But go on.
Yeah. Because all I'm trying to do, I know everybody has a filter, so all I'm trying to do is appeal to whoever is in charge of that filter, whether you're in charge of your own filter or whether you've externalized this to this other person.
No, he is the gas and I'm the brakes. So I would be the one to decide something is going too far. That's not his job. His job is to tell me when I'm being boring. So
he could lie to you. He could say like, "Oh, I don't think that would be very interesting," but low key.
Sure, but like it'll be very obvious because our positions are at opposite ends of the job. Where like, is the Cuties review? He's going to look at the Cuties review and be like, "Hey, listen, I just don't think that this is going to get much of a reaction from anybody." Like he's not going to say that. He could say that. It's possible he could convince me. I find it very unlikely. I think.
Yeah, a good liar wouldn't do that. Yeah, because it'd be obvious.
He didn't watch the Cuties review before I posted it.
When did you hire him?
He was like, there's no reason to watch it. Like, you're talking about, you're gonna give your blunt thoughts about Cuties. Like, sure, whatever. And then when I posted it, he was like, this could have been a little shorter. That his only concern was that it was too boring and meandering. Not that like he's never gonna tell me like, don't say this because it's too upsetting. So that he's a filter, but on the other end, you would be the filter or suggesting a filter on the end of too spicy, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, there could be a billion reasons, right? Like when we talked about the order, it's not about the
provocation. We're talking about provocation. You're saying I'm unnecessarily and self-defeatingly provocative, and that I could be less provocative while still being interesting, still being a cool guy, still getting my point across. If I just tweaked things a little bit, it might reach a broader audience and be more compelling.
Provocative is a way of putting it, though I think it gets a few steps removed from the nuance of it. I can accept provocative, though.
Okay.
Because, like, I don't think it's any more or less provocative, in a lot of cases, to change ABC to, like, CBA. It doesn't really change the substance of what you're saying, whatever.
And I think it's everything. I think that changes everything.
But you don't even know what A, B, and C represent. You have no idea. It could very well that if I say CBA, you're like, actually, my artistic instinct tells me that CBA is better. I don't know why I said ABC, right?
Well, I know that you're suggesting changing them for the purpose of making it less provocative, which I don't want to do.
To communicate what you're trying to communicate better. Like, if the art could communicate your idea better.
Better is doing a lot of work there. By better, yes. You mean easier to swallow.
It maybe in
I ain't a gummy vitamin factory. Okay, these are jagged little pills that I want to be manufactured.
But not too jagged. You put a filter on yourself to make them not too jagged, right? But that jaggedness, you want full control over. Nobody can convince you out of it any other way. Nobody can move you on that jaggedness.
I want the amount of jaggedness that I want. Like I said, a lot like action movies are immoral. It's not jagged. It's not a provocative video. It's got like violence and stuff in it, but it's just like a fun video that I think is like an important point I wanted to make. So yeah, the jaggedness is not the point. It's the unwillingness to sand down the jaggedness. I didn't say the thing in the classroom because it was provocative, but I didn't not say it because I didn't want to dumb it down.
You don't want provocativeness to be influencing whether you are or aren't saying something or how you're saying something.
Right, because it's not interesting. If you got the Cuties review would not have gone viral, and nobody would be talking about it if you thought I was saying it because it's upsetting. Like I'm just giving my honest thoughts after seeing the movie. That's what makes the video so provocative. If I said like I'm going to say the most fucked up shit possible after the movie, nobody would care about that because we all know what you could say, and like yeah, my willingness to say it might be funny to you, but it's not that interesting. What's interesting is if I am saying what I actually believe, and I'm stopping myself from holding it in. I'm letting it out despite knowing that it's going to come off as really weird to a lot of people.
Although some people definitely do like you, because it's almost like flirting, where it's like a will they, won't they. I've talked to quite a few people who enjoy you or find you interesting because they're not sure if you are 100% truthful on some stuff. Like
I know, that's why I made a video called "The Cuties Review is Not Satire."
Yeah, I think way too often people think you're joking when you're not, and it's kind of frustrating.
I agree, because, and I see people arguing with each other, or people who want to defend me on Twitter being like, that was satire, and then I have to be like publicly like, no, it wasn't satire.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh,
you don't understand a joke, bro. He's not joking. Like,
right? Yeah, and it makes me look bad because of the deal I'm saying I made with my audience, where I'm like, I'm gonna be honest with you. If I'm seen as going around saying like, it's just a prank, bro, that's kind of horrible. Like, I don't want to make people feel bad just to get it to make money. I'm not trying to make people feel bad to get attention. I don't want to do that. I think in exchange for the bad feelings, I have to be saying I'm being really honest with you, and there's a point to it, like a greater artistic or moral point that I am trying to make. I think it's a good thing. I'm trying to be a good person, and I think that triggering people and laughing about it is not outside of certain venues, like maybe a stand-up act. I broadly, especially in today's political climate, I think is a bit ugly. I don't think it is a morally good thing to do. I think it makes people hate each other more, which is the opposite of what I want.
Okay. I think I've done as much as I could with this, because I'm just trying to appeal to you as the artist, because I think, whether stated or not, it is better to exist in a world where your art got to more people. And I do think that if there's some 0.005% compromise, it is worth it at some point if it gets like such and such amount more people to find your work or to engage with it, right?
And it's not, but then it's not my work anymore.
It would still be your work. Anything that comes out of you is your work, whether you want to identify with it or not, right?
I would have changed.
Well, if you came out with a video tomorrow that was not truthful or per your own thing, it would still be your work. Everybody would count it as your work.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You're saying don't you want your it would be not my voice anymore. You're saying don't you want your voice to reach the broadest arguments? The broadest audience. I'm saying that.
Not necessarily the broadest, but like, there are tiny compromises you can make in your brain that you're already making, and I'm just trying to appeal to that, because it's already happening. You're already making those.
It's this very manipulative.
That's how I talk.
Why? Why is that? Let's turn the tables. Why are you so manipulative? Why do you think that's a good thing to do to yourself or others?
Manipulative is optically bad, but I'll bite the bullet on it. So the reason is because a lot of the purpose behind my communication is to get people to understand me or respect where I'm coming from, or in this case, to change minds a little bit, right? Because I'm trying to communicate to like the core of you as an artist and get you thinking, whether subconsciously or consciously, in a way that will lead to more people engaging with your art later down the road. So if I can have any impact on that, I'm going to try to do it in the best way possible. And this is.
But you want them to understand you in a carefully presented way.
I think
you're not really giving
separate from
you're not giving people the tools to peek behind the curtain exactly. It's you're much more careful with how you present stuff.
Yeah, because I think a difference between us is you have a very deep connection to your art, and because of that, a compromise on the part of the art is almost like a compromise on the part of you, and at that point, they're out of sync and they're not the same thing. For me, like, the ideas are what I'm trying to communicate, and I feel like they exist separately from the body that communicates them. So I can make a lot of compromises in communicating the idea because I'm just serving the idea. I'm just trying to communicate an idea or a feeling to people, and I'm very flexible in what that has to look like for different people for them to come away with that emotion or that idea.
So what's your goal as a content creator?
my goal as a content creator is to communicate those ideas and emotions to as many people as I can.
Persuasively? Like, do you want other people to adopt your ideas, or you just want them to hear them?
I just want respect. I just want them to understand where I'm coming from and to respect it. That's all.
What does respect mean to you?
It means that they feel it's valid. They heard it. They could see themselves growing up in my body with my experiences and believing that thing. That's why, like, when you didn't believe that my internal experience as I was describing it was true,
it was invalidating.
Yeah.
And okay, so we all want external validation. Is there another meaning to when you say that you want people to think what you're saying is valid? Beyond like making you feel smart, which we all want.
That's not really the point for me.
Yeah. I know. I'm assuming that there's something else you meant by that. I want to know what it is.
Yeah, I think that for more people to have some of the ideas that I'm communicating on stream, I think it would be better for their lives and for the world. So for instance, empathy. I think if I can get people to become more habitually empathetic, to go to that as a tool in their toolbox rather than to like discriminate, or rather than to jump to conclusions about people, or rather than to like intellectualize why they have a hatred or a negative emotion about somebody, that's something that I feel would be better for the world and for individuals to adopt. And so oftentimes I feel like these ideas have been personally fulfilling in my life, and they've really helped me in situations where if I didn't have them, my life would be worse. So I try to give that to other people who may not have grown up with my same experiences and learned those same lessons or encountered those same ideas. Like with the Cuties thing, I tried to really get people to even watch it, because it's honestly, it's a good movie. And beyond that, I don't want people shitting on something they haven't seen, because it's all of us contributing to that led to like this lady choosing not to make movies anymore, when like that was really good. And I would have rather lived in a world where she didn't get that criticism and got to keep making movies, or people understood this.
And empathy helps preclude a dog pile, is what you're saying.
A little bit, yeah, for sure.
And so you see me preaching some of the same stuff, or a lot of the same ideas. Like it seems like we have a lot of the same values and even goals.
Yeah.
And you see me doing it in a way that you think is not persuasive. And if given the choice to persuade or provoke, even if provoking might be more intellectual, not artistically honest, if there is such a thing, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You're saying that the greater good dictates that you choose persuading over that.
A little bit, yes. Although it's tough for me to know, because I don't know how much of like the good of your positions and stuff has come from this unwavering dedication to be true to yourself. Like if I were to more honestly word it, it makes me very sad that I understand a lot of the stuff that you're saying, but other people simply cannot because of the way that it's presented. That makes me feel bad, because I got value out of listening to you and understanding you because I worked hard to see past those things. And other people are just incapable of that for one reason or another at this moment. They were not able to see past it. And so I think if I can like move you at all, or even get you to consider that on like future messages or future conversations, it'll help everybody, because I want more people to understand and grapple with your ideas, not to be like taken aback by their presentation solely, because I don't feel like that's fair, but it's like an observable thing that's happening, and it's fixable by you in a way that I don't think would compromise your art personally, although we may have a difference of opinion there, and I think that's fair because you're the artist.
We have a big fucking difference of opinion there. I think that one thing that Destiny has done for me, or maybe the main thing, is sort of help translate, or not even translate, but more like just give people the okay to engage with me. After last year, creators with millions of followers gave people the not okay to engage with me, and it took a long time. And then like my channel was shut down for 4 months, so it took a very long time to kind of recover from.
And I think that part of the problem for me with what you're suggesting is that I'm also in protest of the norm itself.
Okay.
And that I'm like, if we all start being more blunt, and if we all stop shaving off the rough edges, then we can just talk about things more directly and I think more interestingly, and it won't be as provocative because we'll get used to it. We'll understand, and we'll trust each other more.
Yeah, I think there's a balance there on both sides.
And you think I've gone too far?
Yes, but I would also, from your perspective, see how I go too far in the other direction. I think both of us are at extremes here in what we believe, if I'm being like wholly honest.
I don't know if you're at an extreme. I mean, you're willing to get into some pretty murky territory in this conversation. There's people who wouldn't even watch it or admit that they watched it. So I don't think you're at an extreme, but I get we're at, and within this argument, obviously, yeah, that's the side you're on. Okay, so then I think it comes down to, have you seen or read Watchmen?
Yeah.
Okay, so it comes down to the hypothetical of like the Rorschach's diary. Are you gonna drop it in the Dropbox at the newspaper? Like, is it better to be honest, even if it leads to self-destruction? Or is it better to be more pragmatic? And I think that I would rather be dead.
Yeah.
Than compromise.
I'll be honest with you. Yeah, I probably wouldn't drop it into the Dropbox. I probably wouldn't share that information with the world, but that's because like I'm looking at the two futures and I prefer one over the other.
I'm not looking at the future when I make that decision.
Right.
The day I got arrested, they put me in the drunk tank for like 4 or 5 hours with like the saddest people imaginable, passed out on the floor and puking or having just puked. And then they pulled me out, and the arresting officer said, do you want to give us permission to search your house for weapons, or should I come back and ask you again tomorrow? And I knew they didn't have a warrant, but I could consent to the search, and I didn't have any weapons. I had some like pellet guns, but I wasn't going to get arrested. That maybe they'd confiscate them because they look real, but like it seemed very likely, at least the way he was wording it and the way my brain was working, like if I let him into my house and he sees there's no plans, there's no, I don't own any guns, like they might drop the charges tonight, and the way he's wording it is like I won't be held. Maybe they'll stop detaining me, and I can just go home and go to sleep, or I can spend the night in jail. And just the way he asked me made me feel like I can't, even though I could have avoided everything that came after that. I think if I had just said yes, I just said, I think you better come back and ask me again tomorrow. And I just couldn't. And part of me wanted to do it. I get what you're saying, but I couldn't do it. I can't stand it. It's not, I think I should say it's not like, it is a moral stance kind of, but I can't stand it. I think even if I wanted to do what you're suggesting, I would freak out. I don't even know if I can do it.
Okay.
It is very distasteful for me to be in situations where people are telling me what I have to say beyond what I think is reasonable. Like I think you can't threaten to kill people, you can't dox people, you can't scream in somebody's ear. Like that shit's fine, but I can't handle it.
it has to be on your terms at the end of the day, no matter what. And that's why I'm like appealing to you as like a dude, you know, like I'm just hoping, whether consciously, subconsciously, whatever, I do impact you at like a deeper level to where it doesn't feel weird. You're like, no, this is my decision. I think
it might be backfiring, but I think you might have made it worse.
Maybe. I thought it was worth a shot, you know.
It was.
I'm happy you think so.
Okay, so you're basically saying I'm an asshole.
No.
A little bit.
You can be.
Well, you're saying I'm leaning in the direction of asshole, and that I should rein it in a little bit.
No, you're just not willing to compromise on like the idea of.
Well, that's what an asshole is. If somebody's uncompromising.
Depends on what they're saying, right?
Well, you're not saying I'm like, you're not saying like, wow, I'm so impressed that you're so strong-willed and like that you see so clearly through the fog, and that you know what the right thing to do is, and you do it. And you're not calling me brave. You're calling me a prick.
I'm not calling you a prick. Like we're getting into one of those moments where like this is not what I'm saying. Like I respect you as an artist. I respect you make these artistic decisions and whatever. I don't think that makes you an asshole or anything like that. You're just unwavering. Stubborn is probably a much better way.
Are you willing to say you're not willing to call me a prick?
No, I don't think you're a prick.
Okay.
I think you're stubborn. I don't think you're a prick.
Okay. All right.
You were a bit of a prick earlier when you wouldn't believe me about stuff, but I don't think.
See?
Everyone can be a prick. I can be a prick too. It doesn't mean you think I'm a prick, right?
Yeah, but I feel like your main argument is that I'm uncompromising. I think prick is just there's a shorthand, but I understand you want it to be read with a little more softly and with more nuance.
In part, but I also just don't feel like prick aligns with what I'm thinking in my head. Like optics aside, convincing you aside, prick is further off the mark from what I honest to God believe. Even if I talked like MrGirl and I had like no filter and I said it exactly how I wanted to. Stubborn would be how I would say.
Okay, what would you say if you had no filter?
Stubborn. You're stubborn. You don't want to compromise on this thing, even though I think you could see value in it, but it makes you uncomfortable, and that idea, that discomfort, puts you away from it. You're like, no, I don't even want to change the order. No, the way it came out of my head is the perfect way that it is, and I'm not compromising this at all, because if I compromise on this, what kind of artist does that make me? I'm not MrGirl anymore. I'm not the honest guy anymore.
And I think you're being too careful
in calling you stubborn
in your life.
Fair enough. Maybe I could do with a bit more MrGirlism.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to say everybody should be like me, but I guess if you're saying I'm stubborn, then my pushback would be maybe you're too careful.
Fair enough.
Maybe you should upset people more.
I'm trying to in 2022. I'm trying to debate and be more fighty. Like, this is more fighting than I usually ever do on stream.
How do you feel about it? This conflict that we've had to some degree. How do you feel about it?
I feel good. I feel like if I wouldn't have fought you, I wouldn't have understood you better. It's kind of like I don't know. Have you seen Naruto? Do you know what that is?
I've never seen it.
Okay. It's this like anime that's about like ninjas that fight, and sometimes when one really powerful ninja fights another one, they feel like they share like a bond. They understand each other more deeply because of that, and it's a bond you can only get by fighting. I feel like I've established some of that, and I'm starting to see it. There's a value to really getting in conflict with people because I'm understanding it better.
I appreciate you doing that.
I appreciate you talking with me, honestly.
Anytime.
All right. Do you have more time for other stuff, or I'm not sure what you have after.
You said that. I thought you were done. Yeah, sure. What else you got?
I think you did a lot of work making sure that the conversation didn't fall off the rails, and I think MrGirl judged you very harshly. I think you deserve a lot of credit for how well that convo went. Well, at the very beginning, and he has beliefs that are going to make him think negatively of that, right? He has beliefs about the way that the world works that already presupposes how I'm feeling about things, and what I'm saying isn't going to be in line with that presupposition about the way that I am viewing the world or experiencing it. He would assume that I'm deluded at some points because I'm not being honest about something that I can't see. Although I don't know if he would blame me for that. He would probably just say that, like, well, you can't see it, you know, like, I think everybody has this impacting them whether they see it or not. So I get it. It's just, I think that's rough, because with unfalsifiable things like that and beliefs like that, you start ignoring what people are telling you, and that doesn't exactly fall in line with his empathy thing. But I'm sure that'll be a topic for another day. What do you think about his insistence to give people his jagged pills rather than making them easier to swallow? He thinks that the jaggedness of the pills is part of what makes them valuable. That's part of their purpose. I think when he starts to separate the prickliness of an idea and the imperfections in its delivery from the artistic value of the thing itself, I think he could eventually do that or come to that conclusion. But I don't... he didn't in this conversation, but he's enforced that over a long time in his life of thinking that jaggedness has some value, and so it's going to be very difficult to convince him out of that, right? So I think that jaggedness, separating that from the artistic value of what he's communicating. That's why I was happy when he asked me, well, what are you trying to do? How do you see this? I see the idea as separate from my communication of it, willing to make a lot of concessions on the communication of it, as long as I can get the idea into people and get them to respect it or grapple with it. So I'm much more flexible, but that's because I don't view it as an art or something like that. And if I did view it as an art, I actually think part of my art is in delivering that idea to as many people as possible and getting as many people to understand it as possible. So for me, part of the artistic value is in concocting a message and a delivery such that it gets to as many people as possible. I think there's art and skill in that, and that's where I like to put my focus, because the result is also that idea, that feeling gets to more people, and so it seems like doubly good for me. I find him a very strange to listen to in a way I can't put my finger on. It's kind of like when you lose a lot of blood and you're like out in the snow and you've been shot and you want to go to sleep. That's what I would describe it as. He is the sleep. He is like it's very comfortable to give up. I think it makes it very easy to give up and give in to him. I think a lot of the times when he's forming his arguments and communicating his points, he makes it feel like very easy, even like eventual, that you're going to give in. Hypnotic, yeah, sort of hypnotic, maybe comforting, something like that. That's at least how I feel. You may feel very differently. How I feel is like being on the other side of him. That's how it felt. And I feel like some of these things, like I said before, you can only feel when you're fighting. So I felt like his warrior spirit while I was talking with him, and that's what it was. Like, just give up. Just give in. Yeah, you said this, 60%, 10%, 20%. Well, hold on, because all these percentages are about a group that already presupposes what you're talking about. Like, I have to remember to go back. I cannot just give in like, okay, yeah, we're 60 into 10 into 5 into 0.0, so of course we can't trust people. Like, we get to points where it's like, it feels like it would be very comfortable to give in, but I have to remember what the arguments are, and taking notes really helped me there. Do you see any issues with him saying that every interaction has a sexual component? No, because that was something that really helped me digest that, is he thinks that there's a sexual component to like all of human behavior in every action. So he's like, well, if I think it applies to everything, then of course I'm going to think it applies here, and it doesn't even matter how much of it is applying here or what percentage influence it's having, because I just think it permeates all things. So of course I'm always going to think there's a sexual component to things, so maybe it's not worth arguing about. And it's like, yeah, that's a point to like agree to disagree. If you think, like the Force, there is an energy that permeates everything and has an influence on everything, I can never convince you like that the Force didn't do this or the Force isn't responsible for this. When he was making these analogies to religion, I really do feel like in that analogy, if we were to pick who's one-to-one, and this is because from my perspective, I think MrGirl is the religious person and I'm not. It feels like I'm agnostic and he believes that there is this thing that permeates everything and can't be shaken from that belief. It's unfalsifiable for him. So I feel like the only person that can give ground as me towards that idea of the world, because it's all encompassing. It explains and is a part of everything. So, but I think the religion thing was good, because once I switched it around a little bit and adjusted his analogy a little bit, I think it fit more with our situation better, and we were able to kind of see eye to eye. But he is trying. I felt him, especially after we took some pause after getting heated, I felt him trying really hard to like find a place where he can agree with me. And I don't often feel that in conversations with people, especially when it gets heated. I didn't when he didn't believe me, but when we took a bit of pause, both of us, and we tried to reframe and restart, I could feel him trying, and that's huge, because I don't always feel that with people. I don't always feel that when we watch these conversations in arguments as well. Should I go talk to Steven? Do you have any thoughts, comments, whatever, about that conversation with MrGirl?
Well, I only caught like the first hour-ish of it, so where else did you guys go to?
Oh, after the first hour. We went all over the place, I feel like. Did you see where we got heated and we were like arguing about him not believing me and stuff?
A little bit, yeah.
What do you have advice on what I should have done there to get out of that, or is that kind of just something we had to confront?
I think if you establish a fundamental difference, you have to accept it and find out if you can move on from there, or otherwise you just stop that line of questioning.
Okay. Because
you can't, otherwise it's kind of hard to do anything from that point.
Yeah, because it wouldn't have mattered anything I would have said. It would have been like wasted breath, because he wouldn't believe it. He already has an idea of what the truth is, and what I say has no impact on it.
Usually what I try to push people for there with the way that he was talking is I would focus on the unfalsifiability of what he thinks, because that's a little bit scary. Because he just makes it sound like, because like what if he actually has a unique thought process and everybody else is different? But like so he runs the risk of being incorrect with no way to verify that, since he can't externally validate somebody else's thoughts. And I would just be curious to listen, like, well, how do you think your way through that conversation? Or how do you think your way through that problem? Like, or do you just accept that there might be some things that you're fundamentally completely wrong about, and you just have no way to verify that?
So it's interesting, because I know to you personally, I think I've heard you say in the past that that's one of your deepest fears, is that you have like stuff that you're just going to be wrong about, and you have no way of being convinced out of it or knowing.
Yeah, for me, for sure, yeah.
And you guys mentioned it in your conversation together, and I think he just accepted that there are going to be some things he can't be convinced out of, and he would be wrong on, and he just like bit that bullet about the trans thing, and that was like, oh, okay, we're not used to seeing that in this space, being so okay with that, and I don't know where you go from there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Then you start giving examples of like, well, what if somebody believed this or that? And I think he even bit the bullet on that too, because I was like, what if somebody thinks they're in the Matrix then and they want to kill you? And he's like, well, if they do, they do. Something's not right. But it's one thing to have that belief as like a YouTuber, but if we're talking about like government policy, it seems like we can't do that, because our differing opinions are going to determine how we engage with like government policy, right? So we have to have some kind of way to form a truthful consensus on something. That's what I would feel.
And similarly to the government policy research as well, like I mentioned to him, well, one problem I'm seeing is you have some of these like non-falsifiable or unfalsifiable beliefs, and I'm wondering how those are going to impact your research. They're going to cloud your ability to like understand what's in front of you. And his response was, oh, I'm going to put a disclaimer of those things, but that's part of my coverage. I'm always going to have some things that I think I may be strange on or immovable on, and I'm just going to say those from the get-go, and you can take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But it feels like you should confront that and try to change that. I would be uncomfortable having that exist, but he seems very comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. But obviously, you know my position.
Yeah. I'm trying to do more debates, and I'm trying to every time I see a thing that I disagree with, or even if it brings conflict, I'm trying to engage in it. And I'm not good, or I'm not practiced in that. So if you see anything where I could have advice, I would gladly take it. So if you ever see a place where like, you do this thing when you argue and I don't think that's good, or you let somebody trap you here, I would be super interested in hearing that, just to like put that out there. Yeah. And if you saw anything in that, I would be curious to know, but it sounds like in that hour you didn't see much of that.
No, or like, I mean, I do think it was good that you recognized that there was like a fundamental disagreement that you kind of couldn't move on from. But I don't know how to resolve that. You kind of have to be able to. I think society relies on us being able to both agree on like what's real, right?
Yeah. Beyond that, were there any missteps or like things I could have done better off the top of your head?
Fuck. I only saw like the first part, so I'm not sure. I guess what was your overall impression? What do you think?
Overall, what do I think?
Of like how you feel the conversation went.
I think it went well, all things considered. And I'm starting to enjoy this thrill of like, I understand a person more deeply having argued with them than I would have like watching an argument that they had or something like that. Like, I compared it to like if you have like a soul at your core, like some kind of like crystal seed from which all of you grows out, all of your beliefs, all of your actions, who you are. I feel like you get to touch that a little bit when you argue with somebody, and I've kind of enjoyed doing that, and I think I need to do more of that and look for more of that and be more intentional about feeling out that core rather than all the arguments that are on the surface.
Yes, and the contrapositive of that is, so when you do debate, you do see that. When you don't, you absolutely do not see that. There are people that do prepared content that I have a very high opinion of, and then when I hear them talk or get into an argument, it's like, oh my God, you actually don't know fucking anything. Like, you showed every single piece of knowledge and information you had. You laid it all on the table in that like 10-minute YouTube video. Whereas like if I'm doing a conversation on a topic, if I do like a 10-minute talk on something, there's like hours worth of material I could talk about, because you have to synthesize more material than what you're talking about to know what you're talking about. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if I say like, oh, I think this is bad because it's really dumb, and you're like, well, why do you think it's dumb? It feels like a lot of video essays are like, whereas I would hope you'd be like, well, it's dumb for this reason and this reason and this reason. You can see it because here, like, you'd be able to talk more at length about it. But man, holy fuck, people are unable to do that. This is why I really like, you can call it debate. It doesn't have to be a debate. It could literally just be a conversation about a topic. I'm trying to get away from using the word debate because people have a very negative, you call debate bro as like this way to escape the responsibility of being able to defend any idea that you have, even in like a casual conversation. People just don't want to ever have to defend what they believe in. So yeah, I don't know. I call it conversation, but yeah.
It's interesting you say that because, and maybe this is misguided on my part, maybe I'm wrong here. It does frustrate me that oftentimes when I make an effort to engage in conflict and to really challenge other people, and in my mind, it's racing and I'm trying to control all my emotions and I'm engaging as if it were a debate, as if I'm trying to be persuasive and whatever. It's not perceived that way from the outside and people still call it a conversation, but to me it feels very different. But maybe it does more harm.
So you're saying when there is a debate and people call it a conversation, that frustrates you, or?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, you just have to use conversation, because when you say debate, it's just like a toxic word. Like people will just turn, it's like the term white fragility or like white privilege. You can't use these terms anymore. You instantly, the person's brain will shut down. So you have to find other ways to talk about these topics, or even feminism. You can't really talk about feminism. You have to use other words because people's brains will shut down immediately. A lot of conversations are debates, but really like a conversation is just a polite debate, but people are too stupid to realize that.
Huh, okay. So maybe it's okay not to have that. I guess it just feels like I feel robbed of like people seeing that I have the potential to hold my own in aggressive conversations or debates when they don't call it as such. Because I also see people criticize me for like, why are you giving advice on stuff when you never do this yourself, when you avoid fights, when you don't engage the way that Steven does or Vosh does or these other debaters do. And that makes me almost feel like lesser or something because...
Yeah, you are. Or I know what you mean. I'm just kidding. I know what you're saying about, yeah.
Okay. Because I also feel like... a lot of the prestige and whatever in this space seems to come from being identified as a debater, and it feels like you can't be identified as a debater without engaging in debate or having debates. And if every debate turns into a conversation, I never get to be viewed that way.
Sure.
because I'm trying to be bigger, Steven. I'm trying to grow. Instead of being a React Andy, I want to create the React content. So like, I'm trying to like do that and follow in the footsteps of everybody else. But it's just hard because my talking style doesn't really align with how you guys talk.
I mean, I think it totally does. I think that any like ability to like logically deduce something or to, you know, reasonably infer something, I think plays into having these types of dynamic conversations where you're arguing over the fact of the matter of something, or, you know, asserting some position and arguing over it. I think it absolutely does.
Okay. It makes me feel better to hear you say that then, because I don't know. Maybe I'm more concerned about this than I ought to be. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. Okay. Damn. How did you feel about the second conversation you had with him, where you guys discussed pedophilia and stuff like that, and you dug down on some of those ideas? Do you feel like you performed as well as you normally do in debates? Because from my perspective, it seemed like there were some stumbles or like some places where you had to go back and re-clarify things because you didn't see where he was going the way you
Wait,
normally
hold on. I'm sorry. Wait. Hold on, I don't know. Ask me this later. Jesus. Wait, okay, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that last part of what you just said?
Yeah, sorry. So it seemed to me that you weren't able to predict where he was going with some of your answers and questions the way you were with the way you normally do. And I'm wondering how you felt about your conversation with him. Do you feel like he challenges you in a way that other people don't, or that it was a more challenging conversation, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, so there's like two ways that you can have thoughts about the world, okay? You can either have a group that you belong with that tells you what to think about a given topic. This is almost every single person I talk to. Or you can have a foundation by which you generate ideas, which is incredibly rare. So, for example, if somebody asks you a question, you in the general sense, somebody might say, do you like this anime? Most people are thinking, is this the popular anime, or do I belong to a group that likes this anime? And then they'll respond accordingly, essentially. Or sometimes they'll even fool themselves a little bit more. They'll say, oh, well, I like this anime, and I like it because of these reasons. But the reasons they state aren't reasons they've thought of. It's a reason they've heard like a YouTube reviewer give that they know they like it. A good example is when Destiny came out, everybody said it was a bad game, and the reason why is because all the enemies are bullet sponges, and the reason why they said that is because there were a few reviewers that claimed that bullet sponging was bad, and everybody repeated that criticism. So a lot of people didn't like that aspect of Destiny 2, and it seemed like they had a good reason for it, but they didn't actually have a reason. That was just another thing they were repeating from another content reviewer. And people do this a lot too. So you have that level, that type of engagement with stuff. I don't like arguing with people like that. That's almost everybody, because there's no thought there to grapple with. I'm fighting a ghost, basically. I'm trying to argue with whatever you heard from some other YouTuber that you don't even understand. And then there's the way where you have some consistent foundation by which you generate thoughts, and those types of people are so much more interesting to engage with, because one, they can give me unique thoughts to grapple with, and two, they're actually capable of responding to the challenges that I give to the things that they say. Those people are more entertaining to me to deal with, even if their thought process is wacky, or if I disagree with a lot of the things they say. It's just more entertaining than trying to argue with somebody that's regurgitating to me, 20% of what they remembered from the last YouTube video they watched.
Oh, for sure. In that group number 2, I think there are the people who are using some kind of formal logical system to kind of evaluate and check what our feelings and notions about the world. And then there are people who go with their gut, and they go off of this subjective feelings and whatever about situations as well, to like further divide it up. And I think it seems to me that more people are relying on the feelings and the instincts about how they think about something than correcting it a little bit with some thought process, than are like actually using a thought process to come to conclusions. Is that like in line with what you see?
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, sorry, it was really wordy.
No, you're good.
So there's kind of one group of people that they shoot from the hip, and however they feel, they're going to put that out there and then defend and work with that. And then there are the people who they start with facts and information and use a logical system to process and come to a conclusion about things. I think very few people are pure in that second process, and more people lean like 80% of the time on the shooting from the hip and whatever comes from their insides, and then they rationalize.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
if that's the case, is that significantly different in your opinion from the people that go based on their groups and what their groups tell them to believe and the arguments that come from the group?
No, I would say it's similar. It's similar or identical.
Okay.
Those intuitions that you're talking about aren't actual intuitions. They're just like, it's just like the intuitions they inherit from whatever group they're thinking about.
Okay. Because the more I look at something like Vosh's morality, this subjective thing where it could change day to day or whatever, that seems to be like lipstick on a pig of just this intuition thing, right?
So, yeah, Vosh is a very weird case. You have to be careful when you analyze Vosh's stuff, because I think he's in the unique case where he's copied a lot of my upper level positions, a lot of which are a little bit unique. But he doesn't have the underlying thought for where they come from. So that's why he's able to give pretty unique takes sometimes, like US imperialism isn't always bad, which is really rare for a lefty, but he doesn't really understand where that comes from, except he's kind of heard some of the discussions I've had about morality, about like consequentialism, but he doesn't really understand it. So he ends up in this like very weird, like meta epistemic nihilist place where literally there's no truth proposition for any value whatsoever, and all morality is both relative and subjective, and all epistemology is both relative and subjective. He's just in like a bizarro world of ultimately skeptical absurdity. So Vosh is like a very hard person trying to analyze because of like the hybrid of like trying to think through things but then copying stuff that's too complicated or a little bit beyond him, or he didn't put the time in to understand properly. Sorry, that was really wordy.
No. Is it condescending to dismiss that logical gobbledygook that the person gives you if you're like wholly convinced that they're just shooting from the hip and intellectualizing afterwards?
All you can ever really do is point out the absurdity of some of the things that they say. And that's it. And like, oh, so you really think that, like, I think Rem tried to do that, and that's where Vosh comes from. Like, Rem asked, like, do you think whether or not the Holocaust happened, do you think that there's a truth value there, or do you think that's like relative? And I think Vosh was trying to say, like, well, that's relative. But I think Vosh was trying to get some really weird, like, the winners write the history argument. But I don't know. It's really difficult to tell. Like, Vosh is like Thanos with the stone or whatever. Like, morality is whatever I want it to be. And basically, it's whatever suits the argument. He's in like a really weird world for it. But you'll see that, like, when I get the chance to push him, he winds up into very absurd territory very quickly, because I can see the contradictions, because I can see the hybrid of whatever thought he thinks he has combined with like the relics of things I've said in the past. So for instance, when we argued about like the Rittenhouse stuff, and I start pushing him on some of the conclusions, like, if you're being approached by a mob of people and they think you've done wrong, are you forced to submit your life to them? And he's like, well, yeah, I guess so, because he's in this weird, because there's other examples like you should be able to infinitely kill people that approach you or whatever. And it's like, well, what about black people getting lynched? He's like, well, yeah, I guess that's the more moral thing. Or you, in these other worlds, like the last time, where it's like, do you think a socialist should have to live differently than a capitalist in any way, size, shape, or form in society, or should they functionally be the exact same thing? It's like, well, I guess they should be the exact same thing, because you don't have that's supererogatory. Whoever taught him, the person that taught him that word fucking messaged me on Discord, like, I'm so sorry, and they sent me the email and everything. Like, god damn it, when he learned that word, it was like the worst thing he could have done for his brain, because that supererogatory word rotted him to the core, or it gave him like a new out to like resist thought on so many different things. But yeah, Vaj is a hard one. You just have to point out like the absurdity, and I think I did that a few times. That's why he doesn't like talking to me anymore, because he realizes that most of his stuff is indefensible upon like deeper scrutiny. So yeah,
he's not talking to like a lot of people I used to enjoy seeing challenge him anymore. He seems to be a lot more sour about like bringing on people who are actually gonna like make him think or uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, he took a lot of bad L's in a row, and I think it hurt him a lot, because normally he's not, even if he takes L's, at least he looks good in the eyes of his audience. But like, he was taking L's against like irrelevant, on panels he looked really silly. There was one other, it was pretty ugly. So I think he kind of lost the taste for the debating thing. It's also kind of weird too, to that feeling you need to like step back and like really rework a lot of kind of your like fundamental ideas. It's probably a really uncomfortable position for him to be in, because he has a really big ego. So for him to admit that he's wrong on something, I think he's a lot more married to his positions than I am, even though he copies my saying of like, oh, I'm not intrinsically married to this. I think he is for some things. So it's really hard for him to walk back some of these ideas or change his mind on it, especially because if he is going to change his mind, it's probably going to come from something I've said, and he's already really self-conscious of that control plus V thing, so he's probably even more desperate to avoid lining up with me on something. So yeah, it's going to look really bad if he's called me a contrarian for the past 6 months on things, and then he finally changes his mind to agree with me on a lot of things, because he's wrong in like 3 different levels there.
Do you think though that maybe that's like a natural life cycle of these like debater or politics people, that they just amass enough of an audience in a community that they can be insular, and then it's just a matter of like a triggering event that leads them to start closing off?
Yeah, of course. I think once you hit a critical mass, that's exactly what you do. I mean, look at Vosh. Vosh made his whole initial climb, his whole initial ascent was debating people bigger than him, me included, over and over and over and over again. He was super happy about it. And then as soon as he starts to get big, it's like, okay, well, you know, I'm only debating people that are bigger than me. Anything else isn't praxi, you know? Hassan did the exact same thing. And I think a lot of other people would too. Once you get to a certain size, like, okay, well, wait, why would I subject myself to the horrors of actually trying to defend my ideas when I can just like jerk off with my community? Like, there's no reason to suffer through all that anymore. I can just like have fun with my community and say, fuck it, you know?
Mm. I almost don't blame him for that either. Like, at a human level, I kind of understand that. Like, these conversations aren't fun to have all the time if you're losing.
Well, yeah, that's the key part. Yeah. Well, it depends too. Also, I like losing sucks, I guess, but at least you learn something more. Like I've learned a lot from things that I've lost. Well, arguably, always more than the things that I've won. I used to say when I played StarCraft, right? Like winning games is cool, but when you lose games, that's when you make improvements. Like if you go on a huge winning streak and you win like 30 games in a row in StarCraft, like it's weird, but it's kind of boring because it's like, well, there's nothing I'm going to change in my build. I guess my mechanics are going to be better. But when you start losing to a certain type of timing attack, it's like, okay, well now we can change stuff. There's more stuff to fiddle with.
But that learning more requires like a willingness to learn or a willingness to change and some other things. Yeah. I
mean, it's the difference between like being like, I'm somebody, like I've always said this, people don't believe me, I don't give a fuck. You should know by now if it's true or not. But like, I like to be correct on things. That's like the most important thing for me. Being right about stuff is more important to me than adhering to some fucking ideology or some bullshit. I don't care about that. But for a lot of people, it's usually ideology first because, your ideology is where you inherit your social standing and your social group from. Like ideology to a lot of people is a group of friends, a Discord to hang out in, a group of people that you can identify with, a whole inherited set of political positions. This is like so important to a lot of people that the idea of ever like betraying that, like you're bought into that. I don't want to call it a cult, but it's almost akin to that. When you're bought into that type of thing, you can't just change your mind, right? Like if you're somebody like Hassan, you can't just become pro-capitalist, then what? You lose all your friends, everybody thinks you're a sellout, like everything is over and you're like, it's just the worst thing in the world. Or, you know, same thing with, you know, Vosh admitting that Destiny was right about most things, right? It's like the worst possible thing that can happen.
Yeah, like if your whole value is your brand and stuff and you don't really care about like getting better at debate or something like that, then that makes sense to me. Is there anything that you wish you could get further along with in a conversation with MrGirl that you haven't been able to, besides that, like that thing that you mentioned earlier where he's convinced of something and can't be convinced out of it?
Is there anything that I wish he would act differently about a certain idea or something, or
like something you wish you could have gotten through to him on or made more progress on that you weren't able to for one reason or another?
The biggest potential pitfall that I could see with him in terms of like conversational shit is it seems like he draws a lot of value from a select amount of personal experiences, which is a little scary because that's basically always going to be impossible to break through. I don't know this 100%, but I know that, like, for instance, we were talking, like, he referenced multiple times like a conversation he had with his ex about talking about being trans and whatnot, and I don't know how much those personal experiences make up his thoughts or feelings about the world, I guess, because if it's a great percentage of it, then those become immovable positions and unfortunately really boring to talk about, because instead of like, well, you know, what does the research say, or like what statistically what's likely to happen or whatever, it becomes like, well, I had this conversation once and this happened, therefore I'm going to extrapolate it to the entire world. And if that becomes the case, then it's like, okay, well then these are like topics that we can't really go down the road on these much more because it's kind of just your personal experience, right?
Yeah. That does become difficult. You can't really engage with it. I guess you could give a ton of hypotheticals or whatever, but it would take a lot longer than if you had some logic that you could work with, or like a rule you could apply to hypotheticals and stuff like that.
I think he said he wants to have a discussion about consent soon, though. That should be an interesting conversation topic, so.
Yeah, I've seen him give some interesting takes on it. And it's
the one
like,
that he did. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, go.
I was gonna say the one that he did about the, like, you know, sometimes when they say then, oh, they mean yes or whatever. Like, I wholeheartedly, absolutely disagree with that. I don't think there's any part of that I would agree to. So that'll be an interesting conversation with a strong point of disagreement, I think.
Yeah. It's like a mixed bag with that too, because he has this problem where he makes a statement that I think if you let him argue it out, it would make sense to most people, but he delivers it in such a way where it's like shocking or absurd. Like when he says something like yes doesn't always mean yes. Like, well, I'm sure we could think up scenarios and whatever, and you could convince me, but this statement on its face is going to be unappealing to so many people, they're not going to listen to you anymore.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. I've asked him about that, kind of like, this looks really bad when you do this. The answer that he gives is interesting. It's one I used to believe in so much more. But his response is basically like, well, he's asking people to trust him, basically. That when he's having a conversation, he's asking for some basic level of trust from the audience, that he's not saying some insane shit, and he'll treat you like an intelligent person as long as you act like an intelligent person. It's essentially like the theory that he goes with there. Yeah.
But if his worldview makes some people liars and stuff, which I found today. So it's like he may be really truthful with you, but I think if you're really truthful with him, it doesn't guarantee that he like believes you or will engage with it in what I would call good faith, because his worldview presupposes you're lying, and that makes that was really what I got stuck on in that conversation for a while. It was like, wait, you're not listening to me. You're repeating what you think I believe, but that's not what I'm telling you, and I can't convince him out of what he believes about what I believe.
Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, I'll believe that about some people sometimes. It just depends on what we're talking about. But I don't know if I've done that to you before. But there are some topics where I'll tell somebody, like, I'm not going to believe anything you say. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you have every incentive to lie to me about this thing. Like, I have been in conversations like that before. I've told that to somebody. But I'm trying to remember I don't remember the context offhand, what it was about, though. But ask Booksmarts for the finger/dick chop-off question. Funny hypothetical he had. What is that about?
You'd cut off all your fingers before you cut off your dick. Surely. Right?
No.
How many?
No.
How many fingers would you? It's time for a hypothetical. How many fingers would you be willing to cut off before your dick? This tests how much of an idiot you are.
Maybe 4. It would depend on the fingers.
So you're saying it's so okay. But if you lose this one, you'd say just take my dick instead.
At that point, yeah. I really like my hands, and I really need them for stuff.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, gotcha. Interesting.
What's your answer there? I know you love your penis, probably.
Yeah, I do, but I also really love my fingers. So it's like either your dick or like 2 fingers, or what is the answer?
However many fingers you're willing to lose is the answer.
I think 4 would be the most fingers I'd be probably willing to lose.
That's the same answer that I gave, but everybody treated me like I was crazy. Like, your hands are for a lot more stuff. Huh, okay. I'm validated. See, guys? I said it before I even knew what his take was. I'm not even Control Ving.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, have you seen Cuties?
I have not. Someone told me you loved the movie, though. One of your favorite movies of all time. Interesting. Brave take.
I liked it. I thought it was a good movie. Like, it's just about like this little girl coming into adolescence and being a dude, growing up as like a very dudey dude. I don't have any experience with that or thoughts about that. And these girls are like copying these dances and these people they see online that are like famous, and they're doing the things they're doing without understanding the full implications of that. And the adults in the movie don't treat it seriously. Like, when you actually watch it, it's really not as bad as people are making it out to be. But that discomfort did get me to think, like, man, it does suck that their role models are kind of lame. Like, your role models are like sexy dancer people, like that like objectify themselves to this extent for like other people, or are hypersexualized. Like,
and it gets even weirder too when there's a lot you could dig into for those types of feminine inspirations as well, because even the ones that like give them something to aspire for or like empower themselves to for the sexy stuff is really ultimately only done to empower men, right? You're becoming a sexier woman for a man, you're becoming a good dancer for a man, you're engaged in all this beauty stuff for men. Like I feel like it gets so ingrained. People get mad at me when I say this. I say someone get mad at me and says like there are a lot of women like, oh no, I like to wear makeup for myself, or I like to wear these sexy beautiful things for myself. Like no you don't. Like bullshit. Like you're doing it because like society's programmed you to look a certain way for men. That's the reason why. So yeah, I don't know. It gets rough. I think that's why it's good that like Disney movies and shit have like the more like we're seeing more like female superheroes and stuff, where the role models are more than just like sexy pop stars that can look good and fuckable to men, you know?
Yeah. And complicated heroines too. Like I don't know what it was called. I think it's Encanto. It's this like Spanish Disney movie that came out recently with this girl with like big rimmed glasses. Have you seen or heard of this at all?
Nope.
It was a really cute movie, and the protagonist is like this like smart like kind of nerdy girl. Like I don't know. I like the heroines that are coming out of Disney as well. Brave, Moana, like. I think these are cool princesses, but I never like I know that in the back of my mind, but I never really thought about this role model thing until that movie, and I was like, well, why is this all of a sudden okay or comfortable for me when these girls are like of age? Like it's still strange that that's their role model and stuff. Like whether it's okay in the sexual way or not, it's sad that that's what they have to look up to, and that's so common.
Yeah.
But and the movie does like such a good job of like following this girl through that, and it's about like that hypersexualized group of little girls who are like copying all these like people online, and on the other hand she is like being raised Muslim and her parents are from Senegal, and you get to see that. Like it's a complicated movie, and it was actually good. I don't think anybody that said all that bad shit really watched it. That's probably why the tomato rating is like 88%, but the audience score is like 16 or whatever. Like, it just it feels bad. And then we see people like Moist Critical, who like does this 4.5 million view review, and he opens it up by saying, "I only watched 30 minutes." Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, then shut the fuck up. Yeah, it's pretty stupid. Yeah.
And then citing other people like MrGirl's review for what his opinion is about the whole thing. Like, bro. But anywho, that's enough of my ranting. I'll let you get back to it. Thanks for talking to me, and if you catch the conversation or any future ones, or you have any advice or things you want to talk about, just let me know, because I'm trying to do more stuff with other streamers and get out of my shell.
Okay.
Alrighty. Bye.
Be careful, babe. Bye.
Bye. I don't like that he calls me babe, but I think that's a conversation for in private.
Please don't do this. I don't wanna watch you die. Please don't hate me. I'm American as apple pie. I'm so sorry. Didn't mean.
I'm not racist, Aussies. If anything, I value your people more than you ought to be valued. Wait, sorry, no.